Welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. You guys know what that means. It is buy, sell, hold day. That's Brian Driscoll. I'm Trevor Trowbridge, and we are excited to be talking another day about college football, Notre Dame football, big picture stuff. We love buy, sell, hold days. Quick reminder, if this does happen to be your first one, this is something that we like to do for our premium message board subscribers. You see it scrolling down there at the bottom of the screen, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Our guy Salty, he puts together a thread in the chat, and it's a buy, sell, hold thread. Now, basically, here's the premise. You guys propose either a question, a scenario, some sort of topic, and then after some discussion, Brian and I will decide whether we buy it, we sell it, or we have to put a hold on it if we just don't have all the information necessary, or if we just don't want to give anything away. Who knows what it is? Who knows how we're feeling today? But I'm excited to jump into this. Now, quick reminder, this isn't like a mailbag, so if you just throw it into the chat, we won't be able to get to it. However, if you are a premium message board subscriber and you just didn't get your post in on time, you can always throw in a super chat. We'll make sure we get it. If you aren't a premium message board subscriber and you put in a super chat, my recommendation is you save that money, transfer that over to a monthly IB membership, and then you can post all of the buy, sell, holds that you want. I know our guy D-Troll Hunter brought it today. He has a lot of good submissions. So I'm excited to dive into it. But, Brian, happy Wednesday, man. It's buy, sell, hold day.
I'm excited. It's going to be a fun day. We had a lot of good submissions, and we're going to have a little bit of a different type of submission here at some point in time, Trevor, because we have a buy, sell, hold that required a photo, and we couldn't get the photo to upload on the site. So what I told, it's from Ryan Brandstetter. So what I told Ryan to do was go ahead and throw that into the chat. So we will bring his up at the end, and then we have a photo to go with it. So it's one of those, if you have $15 to spend, kind of deals. So we'll get a chance to do that at the end. That's going to be a fun way to end it today. But that's actually he is a board member. It's just, we had to go about it a different way because you can't, I'm the only person who can upload photos on the site. So we're going to have that one. That's going to be really cool. Going to have some fun with that. So, but otherwise, you can do a super chat if you want. If you're a board member and you missed the buy, sell, hold window and you really want to get one in that bad, you can go ahead and throw a super chat in there.
Love it. Love it. I love the $15 ones. I will say if I only had $15 to spend, my wife would probably be pretty upset if I spent it on Notre Dame players. But I love doing them regardless, but I'm ready to jump into it today, man.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. So I'm actually trying to figure something out here, Trev, with my my settings because everything is backwards because I had to purge everything yesterday because of some of the issues we were having, and it appears that everything is backwards. So I got to fix that. Yep, there we go. Okay, cool. It was kind of creeping me out because I don't like it when it's like, mirrored. So it looks like, my right is actually, showing up as your right where now. Yeah. So that was creeping me out a little bit. So I had to fix that. So we're good to go now. Now I'm ready to rock and roll.
Good deal. Well, like I said, our guy Salty Virginia Peanuts gets us ready to go. And he gets to do the honors of submitting the first buy, sell, hold because he does us the favor of putting the thread together. So Salty, go ahead and get us started. Buy, sell, hold, Brian. The House settlement on NIL will face various challenges. It will ultimately lead to a college football super league whose teams are separate from the other sports for each college, with elements such as unionization, employee status, and collective bargaining, allowing it to reach a final structure that can withstand legal challenges.
I'm going to sell this because I don't want it to be true. I've said this a lot. I don't want there to be a unionization. I don't want there to be an employment status for college athletes. I just don't. So that part of it, I'm going to sell because I don't want it to be true. And I think that's a barring, them being forced to do so. I just the colleges are going to do everything possible to not play players. And look, I know a lot of lawyers that are involved in this want them to be employees because then, different unions get involved and it all comes down to, people want their piece of the pie that aren't involved in it. That's the biggest thing for me is if you want to fight for players to get their piece of the pie, go for it. But if you're fighting for them simply so you can get your piece of the pie, then, I have no use for you. But at the end of the day, I don't think those things are good for players. I do think we talked about this in the show on Monday with Sean. there needs to be some level of representation for the players. The reason that I think unionization is not as advantageous as it is for a professional sport is because in the professional leagues, I know the average time of players in the league is smaller, but there's a lot of players that are in the league for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plus years that kind of go through this process where you're going to ask a bunch of guys who have been in college for 1 to 4 years to have the knowledge to make these decisions. So then what happens? Then they start getting coerced basically by the quote unquote legal representation they have, who's at the end of the day, you don't know that they're genuinely looking out for the players' interests as much as it is theirs. That's why Sean and I brought up the idea of having some sort of organization made up of former players, especially those who went into the legal profession, from football, basketball, all types of sports. Obviously, football is going to need to be a driver of that are part of that collective bargaining process, that they represent the interests of the players. And then, you want to give players some sort of say, you meet with them, things like that. I can live with that. That's close to unionization, but it doesn't quite go full that way. And I'm not so much opposed to unionization in its basic form. It's just that can be abused so easily, especially from people in the legal profession, when you look at young men and women that are going to be part of that. And I just don't think it, and I think it's also it's not as advantageous in a collegiate setting as it is in a professional setting, because there's twice as many teams and sometimes twice as many teams, and there's twice as many players because the NFL rosters in the 50s, it's like 54, something like that, and then the active rosters, and there's 100, minimum 105 for every college football team. It's going to be so much harder to get everybody on the same page. And so I just don't think those things will work. So that's why I'm going to sell that. I do think that there will eventually, I'll buy the part about there eventually being a football super league where, 70 plus teams from the Power 5 level, so to speak, kind of form a league where football is separate from the other sports. And the NCAA kind of handles all the other sports. And then this commission that they're going to talk about will end up becoming kind of the head of this football-based organization. I do think that'll happen. And there's already a lot of talk about that. That's not me like in my, okay, I'm reading the future and I'm reading and then I'm so smart. That's already being talked about. And I think that'll ultimately happen. And at this point in time, I think it needs to happen.
Yeah, you and I see that the same. I will say, I don't know if that's going to be more due to the House settlement on NIL or just because of conference realignment as a whole. Like we've talked about on the show before, now you have teams like Stanford and Cal, and we're talking about sports like baseball, basketball, softball, things like that. Like they're having to fly across the country multiple times a week now because of this conference realignment deal. So I don't know if it's going to be more of the House settlement or conference realignment that kind of forces this football super league and for it to separate and become its own entity within the NCAA or outside of the NCAA, and then the NCAA manages some of those type of sports. But no, I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
Yeah, that's definitely not me. It's definitely not me.
What are you talking about, man? Before the show, you were like looking into your crystal ball at how today's show was going to go.
I've said, look, if I was football king, if I was football king and I could just like, look, you've all given me the power to do whatever I want. I'm going to do it. It's up to me. There'd be a lot of things I would do, but two things relevant to this question that I would do is I would create an organization, and I'd be adamant about it. You need to make sure you're looking at what's best for players. And what's best for players is not always getting them the most money. That's the difference between college athletes. This type of organization will be also as far as fighting for players' rights when it comes to time management. Look, these kids are struggling to get real degrees and real educations because you're demanding all these things of them. There needs to be a lot of those type of things. And there's not enough people fighting for that. There's too many people fighting for, I want to get the money. Well, if I got to pay you this amount of money for football, then I'm not going to care as much at some of these schools of what you do in the classroom because I'm paying you to play football. The Cardell Jones joke now becomes reality. Like, I didn't come here to, do no school. I'm not paying you to get a degree. I'm paying you to play football. That's what your value is. That's not a good thing. So that needs, that needs part of it. I just don't want it to be employee status, and I don't want it to be unionized. And I don't know. I'm not smart enough from a legal profession to know how do you collectively bargain without being employees or unions. Somebody would have to explain that to me. So there's so many things I've talked in the past about, things that I like is like jersey sales, a portion of jersey sales and things like that, and where the school uses a player's name or likeness to advertise, that they take the revenue from that, they put it into a fund, and that's meant to cover for 5 years any student athlete that didn't play professional, that didn't get drafted or sign a rookie contract in the NFL. Will take care of medical costs for like 3 to 5 years. I mean, there's a lot of things like that you could do. The problem is that's going to be a lot harder to accomplish now because so much of this money is just being given right to the players. So it's like, well, look, if you guys as a roster are making $13 to $15 million a year, save up your own freaking money to pay for your own insurance when your careers are over. You're going to have a lot less sympathetic audience when, let's just, what would that be, Trev? If it's 15 million divided by 105 players, that means every player is getting $142.8 thousand if it was just evenly split. Oh, you know what? You're making that over 4 years. You be smart with your money and buy your own insurance when you're done. Pay for your own medical. We'll take care of you while you're here. But so there's just a lot of things like that would have to get worked out. And I think these type of things make that a whole lot harder. But that's the world we're in now. But those are two things that I would absolutely do on top of many, many other things. Is you're not, and the second thing was I would basically say, leagues can negotiate their own deals. TV representatives can choose to pay. Hey, we're willing to pay X amount of $1 billion because we want to host the SEC, and then we want the NBC, we want the Big Ten, we want this, we want that. But that money's all going into one pool, and it's going to be dispersed amongst all teams. The TV revenue will be, but that's just but you can't really do that till you separate from the NCAA and you become your own organization where you don't have to worry about the MAC and all these other teams. So that's kind of what another thing that I would do. And then now you get rid of the Super League, the Super Conferences, because he's talking about Super League. I'm cool with a Super League. What I don't want are Super Conferences. I want a Super League that has 70-ish teams, and then we go back to where the Big East comes back, the Southwest Conference comes back, the Big 12 comes back, and we do it that way. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I guess I got to get to the next card then, huh? Don't I?
Buy, sell, hold from B-Jam and 41. Aside from the Northern Illinois loss, the Leonard Moore forced fumble on quarterback Tyler Shuck was the biggest turning point of the 2024 season.
Man. Trev, I'm buying that. Because you could point to anything. You can't point to, in my opinion, you can't point to anything in the Texas A&M game. Because any benefits of the Texas A&M game from a turning point standpoint were negated when you lost to Northern Illinois next week. So then it's what's the moment where Notre Dame's season kind of got turned around? Because we talked about the Purdue game. I mean, they were just terrible. Notre Dame kind of walked through the game against, we've talked in Miami of Ohio. They kind of out-towned Miami of Ohio. They didn't blow me away. I know they didn't blow you away in that game either, Trev. It was really the Louisville game that we've talked about was kind of the beginning of the turnaround for Notre Dame. And in that game, you come out and it could not have started any worse. You fumble the opening kickoff. Louisville gets it. They go down and score. You answer with a score. And on the very first play from scrimmage, Tyler Shuck yanks that read zone and he's out the back door. I don't know how that game goes if they go down and score a touchdown there. It just I don't know. And to have that where you have this forced fumble, Jaden Alsbury recovers, you go down to score, you go up 14-0, and then you force a TOD on their next drive, and then you score. Next thing you know, it's 21-7. It's like I've pointed to one of the turning points of the 2017 season. I believe it was 2017. Was that sequence where It was 21-7 against Michigan State, and they're about to score a touchdown to make it 21-14, and Sean Crawford rips the ball out of the hands of the running back and then recovers it, and then Notre Dame goes down and scores. So instead of it being 28-7, instead of it being 21-14 at halftime, it's now 28-7 at halftime, and it's ball game. Like, it was a huge swing because it not only kept them from scoring, but then you went down and scored and made it a 14-point swing. So, yeah, I'll buy that. And then Notre Dame was never challenged again until the USC game after that.
Yeah, that one's up there for me for sure. I'll buy it because that's one individual event. A thing that I would argue is a very close second is how the offense performed in the Louisville game, because that was the first game all season, especially post the Northern Illinois loss, where the defense started out struggling a little bit. They were giving up gains on the ground, allowed us to score on their first drive after a muffed kick return. And the offense, for the first time that season, was like, hey, defense, you kind of got us to this point. We got you. You know, you give us a short field, we're going to capitalize. We need to drive down, we're going to capitalize. Even at the end of the game on the Jeremiah Love screen, because the offense, let's be real here, went a little dormant from like the second and third quarter on, pretty much. But when they needed to step back up and score once again, they did. They had that awesome screen pass to Jeremiah Love. Before that, I believe, was that stack that they ran with Jaden Harrison. And he picked up a first down on that play too. So I would say the offensive performance from the Louisville game was the next thing that kind of turned their season around, that let the defense know, hey, this isn't going to be 2023 where the defense plays lights out most weeks and the offense just kind of reaps the benefits of either A, playing a really inferior opponent, or B, they just score. It's not like the Duke game. You know, at some point, the offense was going to have to break open. I think that game showed the defensive side of the ball, hey, this isn't last year. We can step up to the plate when we need to, and we can put together drives consistently. So those two things were huge. But we've talked about it a lot before. The Louisville game was definitely a turning point of the season, for sure. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will flip a committed wide receiver during the season after Carr, the wide receivers in Denbrock, shows what Notre Dame is capable of in the passing game.
We've been asked this one before. It's possible. It's a possible buy. It just depends on, I'm going to hold for now because it just depends on how this next couple weeks go. I mean, if Notre Dame gets Caden Finley and Braden Robinson and let's say Jaden Warren over the next month, well, they're not going to flip a receiver because they have 5 receivers committed, and that's a freaking really good receiver class. I just said freaking twice in one sentence. I'm being very unintelligent today in how I'm talking. I'm just in one of those moods, Trev. But if they do that, then there's no need to flip a receiver. It's focus on 2027. Now, what I will say is B. Jammin didn't say 2026. So maybe 2027, like let's say a big-time receiver commits this summer to a school. I'm just going to use Monshun Sales as an example because he's a stud and he's an in-state guy. Let's say he commits to, Ohio State tomorrow. And you go out there and CJ Carr and the receivers and Denbrock and all that. So could I see them saying, hey, this is why you need to come here? Don't go the next Ohio State guy. Come be the first, Monshun Sales at Notre Dame. So that's kind of what I would say, maybe 2027, but not 2026. Unless, like I said, they strike out here over the next month with the guys on the board. You've got Caden Finley and Braden Robinson visiting this weekend. You've got Jaden Warren visiting the next week. You've got Devin Fitzgerald coming in the final week. I think Brian Williams is also slated to come in over the next 2 weekends. So there's some guys on the board. It just depends on how you finish with those guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility for sure. I couldn't tell you or give you direction any which way, but it would bode well. All the stars would be aligning if CJ Carr has that type of season and the wide receivers reap the benefits of that. And Denbrock shows what Notre Dame is capable of. So, sure, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Yep. Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. Evan Stewart's knee injury is devastating to Oregon's season.
Well, I'm going to sell that, and because I think devastating, and knowing D-Troll Hunter like I do, I think he intentionally uses the word devastating, because if you don't use the word devastating and you're just going to say it's going to have a negative impact on their season, then, well, yeah, that's an easy buy. Devastating puts a little bit more stank on it. Like, they are not going to be the team that they thought they were going to be because of him going down. And that is a legitimate concern for me, is can they be the offense that they're capable of being? But the reason I'm going to sell that is because, number one, it's a little early. But number two, there's things that can factor into this that could take some of that pressure off. So, a couple things that I look at and say, number one, can Oregon be a better running football team this year than they were last year? Not that they weren't good at running the football last year. It's more so they weren't it wasn't a focal point for them. They were a heavy passing team, and they could run the ball at times, and they had a couple good games. They ran the ball really well on Oregon State and Michigan State and Illinois in a big win, and they ran it on Washington. But, they ran it okay on Penn State. A lot of yards, but, some scrambles built in there. But they weren't a team that's just going to run out just, okay, we're going to run the ball down your throat. Can they do that this year? They got a really good running back out of the portal from Tulane, Mekhi Hughes. And they've got some, good depth at the running back position, including a former Notre Dame commit, Jaden Lamar. They've got a good-sized offensive line. They've got a couple. You and I talked about the portal pickups that they signed this offseason. There's some very good size there. Their right tackle is 6'6", 330. Their left tackle's like 6'8". I'm looking at it right, 6'8", 310. You look at their guards. They've got good size inside there. So they've got talent to be able to run the football. Dave, I'm trying. Their left guard 6'3", 340. Some of these kids' names, I feel bad that I can't pronounce them, but I can't. And the problem is with a lot of Polynesian names, you can't just sound it out, because it's usually not like we were saying Mauigoa for a while because it's Mauigoa, but it's Maunoa. So like I don't want to disrespect and butcher their names, but their center is 6'2", 325. And then they picked up the guard from USC who's 6'5", 320. So they've got a really big offensive line. Can they be more balanced where they don't need the receivers to carry the day like they did in the postseason? Like, their receivers struggled against Ohio State. Evan Stewart didn't play in that game, and they went out and got dominated in that contest, because once the throwing game got taken away, they didn't have anything they can rely on. And so that hurt them. They have the tools to be a more balanced offense this year. Can Will Stein run an offense that way? That's a different question. The second, and also Dante Moore's not the runner that Dylan Gabriel was, and he's definitely not the runner that Bo Nix was. The other part of it too is yeah, it hurts to not have Evan Stewart, but they still have talent at receiver. Kyler Casper is a kid that I liked coming out of high school. He's got some size to him. He's a big, tall kid. Hasn't done a whole lot yet, but there was a while there where Miles Boykin didn't do a whole lot in college and had a chance to break out. DeCorian Moore's an elite freshman. Jeremiah McClellan, again, I think he was a little overrated coming out of high school in that he was some people had him as like a top 50 guy, and I don't think he's quite that, but he's still a good football player, talented football player. We've got Gary Bryant coming back, who's a veteran that transferred in from USC. He didn't do a whole lot for them last year, but 2 years ago, he caught 30 passes for 442 yards. So you just look at those things, Trev, and they got Malik Benson out of the transfer portal, kid that's been kind of everywhere. He's a veteran, has played a decent amount of football in his career. Justice Lowe is there. They've got Jack Ressler, who was a kid that Notre Dame offered. Jurian Dickey was a highly ranked recruit a couple of years ago. And then, of course, they brought in Cooper Perry and as a true freshman who you and I actually, Ryan and I both really liked Cooper Perry a lot coming out of high school. They've got, they lost a lot at tight end. I loved the Ferguson kid that they had at tight end last year. But Kenyon Sadiq's a good football player. Jamari Johnson, they got out of the portal as well, is a quality football player. So it's kind of like, if you look at it, Trevor, from the standpoint of, did they lose a really good football player? Yes, they absolutely did. There's no question. And if you look at it from that standpoint, boy, that's going to hurt you because you don't have him. But you're replacing 48 catches for 613 yards is what he did. And the year before, he was, at A&M, he was 38 for 514. So I think part of this is he's made out to be some elite player, and he hasn't produced like that. They did pretty well against Ohio State in the first game, but he wasn't there the second game. but but what do you have? Okay, yeah, you don't have him. That hurts, but what do you have? And as I just pointed out, Trev, there's still a lot of talent coming back at that position. Do they have any elite guys that aren't freshmen? No, I don't think so. But do they have good football players there still? Yeah. Yeah, they still have good football players there. It's just going to require shift in focus where maybe you're not as pass dependent on as you were the year before and become a more balanced offense. If they can do that and maybe build the offense around Mekhi Hughes instead of Dante Moore in the receiving core, then I think Oregon will end up being fine.
Yeah, you and I see that the same. Is it a blow for sure? Devastating? No. I don't put that on the same level as if an Ohio State lost number 4 or if Bama lost Ryan Will. I don't put it on that same level.
Like this year. This year. Last year, with Ohio State, I think it was a similar situation. Yeah, you lose Jeremiah Smith, but you still got Emeka Egbuka, you've got Cardinal Tate, you got Brandon Ennis. This is a different deal. You got Travion Henderson out of the backfield, but this year, no Emeka, and so sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. No, I don't put Evan Stewart up in that elite tier of wide receivers. I think he was poised for a really good season because he was most likely going to be the go-to guy. Smaller sample size, he was kind of the go-to guy when he was at Texas A&M. Didn't produce great numbers, but he's older, he's stronger. I'm not saying he was going to be the same player that he was 2 years ago down at College Station, but yeah, it hurts, but it's not this massive, devastated. Oregon's still going to be a good football team this year. Buy, sell, hold. Scott Satterfield is entering his final season as head coach at Cincinnati after 2 disappointing seasons to start off his time there.
Buy. I'm not a big Scott Satterfield fan. And I think in this day and age, you can't go too long with being this down that Cincinnati's been. So, yeah, I'll buy that. I think they're going to struggle this year.
Yeah. Yep. We see that the same. I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold. SEC's hot seat rankings from hottest to hot going into 2025. So should we buy the order or each one individually, or?
It's just, let's do it one at a time and then buy the order. How about that? Because I'm not quite sure how he wants that one.
Okay. Sounds good. So first one, Brett Venables at Oklahoma.
Buy that he is absolutely on the hot seat.
Mm-hmm. Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
Buy that he's on the hot seat.
Hugh Freeze at Auburn.
Buy.
How long has Hugh Freeze been there?
This will be year 3.
Okay. Yeah, I'll buy that then.
I mean, this is a school that fired a coach a year after winning a national championship.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter how long.
Yeah.
If it's more than a year, you're on the hot seat if you're not winning at Auburn.
That's true.
Yeah.
Billy Napier at Florida.
I'm going to sell that he's on the hot seat. I think it's warmer, but I think Billy Napier bought himself a little bit. And I think that some of the turmoil going on at Florida away from athletics is going to make things a little bit where maybe the focus isn't quite as much on that, or maybe it makes it harder to do that since there's other things going on. I think it would take Billy Napier, and I also think that going into the season, Florida's better poised for success than any of those other 4 teams, in my view.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to sell him being on that.
We've talked about it before. Some of the wins they were able to pull out late last year definitely saved them. And then this season, if you're going to have those kind of losses, they just can't be blowout losses. You can't lose to Miami by 20 some odd points, things like that. So I'm with you. They weren't doing
late. Well, they had the Texas loss, but for the most part, they got better about that later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the last one on the list, Mark Stoops at Kentucky.
Buy. That's an interesting one, and we've been asked about him in different ways before, but I just don't know how he recovers from what happened. The year after he basically is poised to leave for Texas A&M, but then people at Texas A&M got mad, didn't want him, so then they canceled it essentially, and he played like, well, I just decided I wanted to stay at Kentucky. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. This Texas A&M's money people decided they didn't want you. Once you do that, you better flip and win that next year. But when you do that and then go 4-8, your time is coming close to an end. And even, whether it's getting fired this year or the next or whatever, it also gets into the aspect of you're a dead man walking, so to speak, as a coach. Like it took Gus Malzahn 2-3 years before they finally fired him, but we knew he was done. He just kept winning enough to hang on, but you knew the first time you have another season like that, you're done. And that's kind of where Mark Stoops is. So I buy that one. Looking at it as a whole, I would rank it this way. I would go Venables, Stoops, Freeze, Pittman, and then really big giant gap and go Napier.
I like that.
That's how I would go.
I like that a lot. All right, I got to follow up on this one for you, Brian. What number of wins do each of these coaches need to get to this season to get off of the hot seat?
Good question. I think, well, for one, I think it's a combination of wins plus who you beat. Who are the wins? So, for example, if Oklahoma this year goes 8-4, that could be problematic for Brent Venables in theory. But if that 8-4 includes a win over Texas, and let's say a home win late over LSU, let's say you beat Ole Miss at home. Because here's the thing, they could go 8-4 and get beat by South Carolina on the road, Tennessee on the road, Alabama on the road, and then let's say they have an upset at the hands of Auburn. Or let's say Michigan beats them or let's say Auburn. So let's say they go 8-4, they lose at home to Auburn, they lose at South Carolina, at Tennessee, at Alabama. That's 4 losses. That's rough. But that would also mean that they have wins over Michigan, Texas, Ole Miss, and LSU and Missouri. So that's why I think 8-4 for Brent Venables this year could be enough for him to keep his job. But it just depends on who they beat. Now, if you go 8-4 and you lose to Texas and you get dominated by Texas, then maybe it's not as okay. And some of the teams that I just named that are good wins end up not being good teams, then that could take a little bit away from it. But so I think 8-4 would have win over Texas, or if you lose to Texas, you better be 9-3 or better. Sam Pittman, I think he's just got to go to a bowl game again. I know Arkansas is not real happy with that, but it's going to be hard to fire a guy that went to a bowl game. I think if anything, I think what we could see is over the next year or so is if Arkansas is with Sam Pittman kind of maybe doing some sort of giving him the ability to retire after a good season and say, hey, coach, look, man, let's just do it this way. But I think he's got to go to a bowl game and win it. And I'd say he's got to be above 500 and go to a bowl game. How about that?
I like that.
Hugh Freeze, I think minimum 8-4 is going to be expected of Auburn this season. I mean, you look at their schedule last year, Trev, 5-7, and you look at who they lost to. They lost to Cal. They lost at home to Arkansas by 10. They lost at home to Oklahoma, got blown out by Georgia. You lost to Missouri in a close game. You lost at home to Vanderbilt. I mean, it's like, dude, it's not just your record. It was who you lost to.
Yeah.
This year, it's like you just got to avoid the bad losses and show progress. I mean, their schedule is very set up well. They got to be an 8-4 team. They play at Baylor. I'm sorry, that's not going to be an easy win, but you got to win that to keep your job. You got to beat Ball State, South Alabama. So that makes them 3-2. Your next 3 games are at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, home against Georgia. You got to win one of them. But let's just say he loses one of those, all 3 of those. You got Missouri at home, got to win that. At Arkansas, got to win that. You're home against Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, home against Mercer before you play Alabama at home. So even if you lose all 3 of those, as long as you hold serve outside of that, you're 8-3 going into the Alabama game at home. That could end up being a job-saving game potentially for him. Yeah. And it may not, 8-4 may not get him fired, but 8-4 makes it so toxic that he'll never be able to win, which is exactly what happened with Gus Malzahn. I think I said Gene Chizik earlier, but I meant Gus Malzahn. But I think at least 8-4 for him, because his schedule's not like Brent Venables, where Brent Venables could go 8-4, and you're like, dude, he did a pretty good coaching job this year.
Yeah.
Like I just listed, for Brent Venables to go 8-4 this season. I mean, let's just give him losses to Texas on a neutral field, at South Carolina, at Tennessee, at Alabama. Just give him those 4 losses. Those are all good teams. If he's 8-4 with those losses, that means he had to beat Michigan, Auburn, Ole Miss, Missouri, and LSU. There's a lot of good wins there to build on.
Yeah.
So, but 8-4 for Hugh Freeze is a different animal, because if you give him the losses to the 4 best teams, so let's say at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, home against Georgia, and at Bama, his big wins are then what? Baylor, Missouri, Arkansas, Vandy. Like, what are the wins you're hanging your season on at that point in time? So 8-4 for Auburn is going to look a whole lot different than 8-4 for Oklahoma.
Sure.
Because 8-4 Oklahoma is going to have some really good wins on their schedule. 8-4 Auburn could have no good wins on their schedule if some of those teams are what we think they are. So that's why I think 8-4 minimum for Hugh Freeze. But I even think, anything worse than that, he's in trouble. He's in trouble. Billy Napier, just go to a bowl game again.
Yeah.
8-4 again. Mark Stoops. I mean, all these guys just got to get back to a bowl game and be above 500 to not get fired. But except for Brent Venables, I think 7-5 for Brent Venables might be enough, because they spent a lot of money on that team this year.
Sure did.
Anything else, the more money you spend, you're going to be in trouble.
Fair enough.
In trouble. And somebody just said, haha, okay, just gave Venables a contract extension until 2029. Which y'all don't do you know how many coaches have been fired over the years, the year after they do a contract extension? Like, do you guys understand what contract extensions for coaches who are struggling are really all about? Like, those are not things that are, no, we have faith in you, so we're going to do that. They signed him after one good season, and they will absolutely be able to get out of that contract if they need to. That was a year ago. So contract extensions are not what people think that they are right now, unless you're one of those coaches that have an insane buyout. But let's be honest, Oklahoma is one of those teams that has the kind of resources that if they want a coach gone, he'll be gone.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you.
Yep.
Buy, sell, hold again from D-Troll Hunter. Central Florida and Scott Frost start off with the same record as Gus Malzahn left him with in 2024 this upcoming season.
Ooh. Let me pull up. I have not really looked at USC or UCF in a while. So let me just pull up UCF's, what they have coming back, because what's not even what they have coming back. It's what they landed, because their team is completely different this year. I'll be honest with you, Trev. I went 4-8 last year. Let's look at what their schedule is. They're in the Big 12 now. It's just still so weird. They've got Jacksonville State, NCAA, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina at home, at Kansas State, Kansas at home, at Cincinnati, West Virginia at home, at Baylor, Houston at home, at Texas Tech, home against Oklahoma State, at BYU. I mean, I'll sell that. I think they'll be maybe slightly better, maybe 5-7. But it's hard to say that, man, because they're all brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have 7-8 new starters at least that are transfers on offense, same number on defense. They got the quarterback. They got the kid from Indiana, former highly ranked kid from Indiana that's just kind of been a bit of a bust at Indiana. There's a reason Indiana keeps not turning to him. They also got Cam Fancher out of the portal, who came from Marshall. Yeah, I'm not, and Scott. I lost faith in Scott Frost with the terrible job he did in Nebraska. So I'm gonna sell that because of their schedule, but I wouldn't be shocked if you're right, or if this submission turns out to be true.
No, that's fair. I'm gonna buy it, but kind of for the same reasons that you're kind of selling it. Like I don't do it with a lot of conviction. The Big 12 is so wide open that when I look at their schedule, I don't know if they have 8 losses on there, but would it surprise me if that they did?
Right. Like who's going to be good in the Big 12 this year? You never know. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's new coaches. You got a new coach at North Carolina who they play.
Mm-hmm.
They have a new coach at Jacksonville State who they play. There's a new coach at West Virginia who they play.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's some new coaches. There's some other coaches on the hot seat, with who they play. They play Oklahoma, Cincinnati. So it's just it's a weird schedule.
Yeah.
It's a weird schedule.
Yep. Definitely one of the weirder ones in the Big 12 for sure to try to dissect. Sticking along the lines of the Big 12, buy, sell, hold. Kansas State will have its first season without an 1,000-yard running back since 2020.
And that was because of COVID, right? I mean, I assume that they didn't play the full allotment of games in 2020. Yeah, they played 10 games in 2020, and their running back, Deuce Vaughn, rushed for 642 yards. So you play a full 13-game season, he's right around 1,000 yards. So, yeah, you had Deuce Vaughn in 21 and 22. Yeah, DJ Giddens the last 2 years. I'm going to sell that. I think Dylan Edwards will get to 1,000 yards. Because the thing about Dylan Edwards is he doesn't have to get a high. He could be like sort of like their version of Jeremiah Love, where he'll have some 100-yard games on 10 carries against some of the teams they play. He's a big play guy. I'll sell that. I'll sell that. I think Dylan Edwards. I mean, look, last year while splitting carries with DJ Giddens, and then Avery Johnson also rushed for 605 yards. Dylan Edwards in 12 games rushed for 546 yards and averaged 7.4 yards per carry. And got hurt against Arizona State, didn't play against Cincinnati. So there was a 3-game stretch there where he had 6 carries for 10 yards. And he ended the season in the bowl game with DJ Giddens out. He goes into the bowl game and rushes for 196 yards on 18 carries. A little bit of a prelude of things to come. I don't think you're going to want to give him 18 carries every single week, but I could see him with what they do in that league. I could see him getting to 1,000 yards. So I'll sell that. It's a good data pull, though, Detro Hunter.
Yep. I'm going to sell this as well, but I definitely understand the lens that you're coming from on this one. Avery Johnson's going to eat a lot of carries. Dylan Edwards is kind of like a multi-purpose type of back. I think he's going to get a lot of receiving yards as well. But yeah, I'm going to sell this. I think he'll get to 1,000.
Because he didn't say regular season, he said season.
Mm-hmm.
So in 13 games, and I think K-State's going to be competing for the Big 12 title, so there's a chance they could end up playing 14 games. Mm-hmm. If they win the Big 12 title and, playing the Big 12 title, they could end up, whether they make the college football playoff or not, they just have to play in the Big 12 title game to get to 14 games.
Yep.
So unless he declares early for the draft, which I don't know that would be wise. Like if he's not at 1,000 yards by then he's not declaring for the draft. If he declares for the draft, it's probably because he's over 1,000 yards already.
Buy, sell, hold. Avery Johnson will rush for over 800 yards this season.
I'm going to sell that one, Detro Hunter, but not with conviction because I just don't know that K-State's going to want to put that kind of workload on him. Now, as we mentioned earlier, he did have 600 yards last year and 113 carries. He was 605 last year, played 13 games. And Avery's also he's a bit of a skinnier kid too. Like to get to 800 yards, I mean, he got to 605 last year, Trev, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. That's a good number for a quarterback because you got to think about sacks and what his numbers would look like on sacks. And he still is at 605. I don't know how much I don't know that you want to use him like Notre Dame used Riley Leonard. And I just don't know that he's got the body for that. So I'm going to sell that, but I don't think it's going to be by much. I don't think he's going to miss by much. I think he'll be definitely more than 605 as long as he stays healthy. I just don't know if he's going to get all the way to 800.
I'm going to sell it as well, but I think he gets within 100 yards. Yeah. Buy, sell, hold. Luke Fickell will be the head coach of Cincinnati again in 2026.
Sell. Does Cincinnati go back to that? Do they go back to the guy that left them? Like, I know teams have done that before, but I just have a tough. I think if Luke Fickell gets fired at Wisconsin, or it looks like he's going to get fired, so he chooses to leave, I don't know that Cincinnati would be the option there, but I understand why that would make sense because he is an Ohio guy and he did have some success there. But I wonder if Cincinnati's looking at the success that Marcus Freeman's having and asking themselves, is Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock and the staff that, because like here's the thing, the staff that was with Luke Fickell at Cincinnati during a lot of their success, a big chunk of that staff's now at Notre Dame. I mean, it's not just Marcus Freeman. It's also Mike Denbrock, who was with him, all the way up until 21. So you look at Marcus Freeman, who was with him till 2020 and was a big driver of the recruiting success. Chad Bowden was part of that from a recruiting standpoint. Mike Mickens was there for the first 3 years. You had Mike Brown was there for 3 years. Gino Guidugli was there, I think, the entire time. Well, Gino came in the second year, I believe, but Gino was there all but 1 year at the end. Like, that's a lot. And so I wonder if you're going to have a situation where they're going to look at that and say, Denbrock leaves, Freeman leaves. Like, what was the first year he didn't have any of those coaches? It was 2022, and they went 9-3. That was a good season, but it wasn't a great season. And actually, they ended up going 9-4. They lost the bowl game, but he wasn't the coach of the bowl game. Big chunk of the coaches that drove that success are now at Notre Dame. And what's Notre Dame doing? They're playing for the national championship. So is there some hesitation at Cincinnati thinking, like, was Fickell really the driver of that success? And people in the chat pointed out that UCF went back with Scott Frost and Rich Rod went back to West Virginia. Very fair. But there was a lot more time in between when those coaches had success. And the big reason Rich Rod went back is because Rich Rod went somewhere else, failed, got another job, and succeeded at Arizona for a while till Arizona made the dumb decision to fire him. Then he went to Jacksonville State and won. He had 3 stops in between there. And I think with Frost at UCF, it's kind of like, who else are they going to hire at that point in time? So, and he was he had a very weird career there. I mean, we just say that, but I still can't believe he didn't win at Nebraska. I really did think he was going to win. I really did. Now I understand why. Now you hear some things about him and his extracurricular activities while the head coach at Nebraska. You understand, like, this guy was not locked into being a great head football coach. He was locked into his own enjoyment of life. And I don't mean that like, hey, live life and be happy. I just mean, you know what I'm saying. But I just don't know if that move makes sense for either. I didn't probably make more sense for Luke Fickell than Cincinnati, but I don't know that makes a lot of sense for Cincinnati. But maybe there's not a lot of good candidates out there, and they feel like at least this will be a PR splash. I'm going to sell it though. Because I mean, they didn't have a great year his last year without all those coaches, and then at Wisconsin with none of those coaches, he's been a failure.
Yeah,
I think that if I'm Cincinnati and I have any sense, any brain at all, I'm going to be like, hold on a second, how much of this success was driven by Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock and Mike Mickens and Mike Brown and Gino Guidugli and Chad Bowden, and maybe not Luke Fickell? Like, how do you not ask that question at that point in time?
Yeah. No, it's a great point. On top of all those things, for me, it's still too fresh, I think, to bring a coach back. Because to your point, some of the other coaches that did return to former stops had a lot of stops in between, a lot of time in between. And so, yeah, I'm selling that one as well. Buy, sell, hold. Navy will be the top rushing offense in terms of total yards in 2025 of all the service academies.
Oh, boy. I honestly don't even know who Army's quarterback is this year, but I'm actually going to sell that. And the reason I'm going to sell that is because I think Navy is trying to become a team that's more and more balanced. I think that's something that they desire to do. I don't know that Navy wants to. I don't know that Navy wants to be as option run dominant as they've been in the past, especially when you think about the fact that last year when their quarterback got banged up, things didn't go all that well for him. So, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to sell that. And it's not even a knock on Navy because I think we've said this before. I think Navy's going to be very good. It's more so that I just think they're trying to lean more towards being. And when I say balance, I mean balance for a triple option team. I'm not saying that Blake Horvath's going to go out there and average 24 to 25 passing attempts per game. I just mean where they're more effective throwing the football. That's what I mean by that. And which means it's also going to happen a little bit more frequently to where, you look at last year, for example, Trev, and you look at Navy, compare Navy and Army and Air Force last season. So, and just compare their offenses. So last year, attempts per game, Air Force is at 11.5, Army was at 8.7, and Navy was at 13.8. But if you look at it, and you think about some of the games where he didn't play, they were not nearly as good throwing the football. They went Braxton Woodson went 3 of 10 for 13 yards against Tulane. So it's just a little bit of a different look with them. And so I think they're going to lean more into that this year. So that's why I'm going to go with Army or Air Force being number one amongst the service academies.
I think I'm going to buy this because I really like who they have coming back. Army doesn't have Bryson Daly. He was a game changer at quarterback.
Really good.
And I think Navy's going to be the most efficient running team of them all. I agree with you that I do think they are going to attempt to not put so much on to Blake Horvath running. Not a chance in all heck that they're going to ask him to have the same amount of carries as what Bryson Daly had last season. They're just completely different guys. But I go through and I look last season, Air Force, they averaged 4 yards a carry. They had 2,600 yards, almost 2,700 yards rushing when the season was said and done. Navy had 3,200, average 5.4 yards per carry. So when I look at this, I think it's going to come down to more of an efficiency thing, not attempts. So I think Navy will get it, but not by a lot. I think it'll be pretty close. But I will buy that Navy will be the top rushing offense among service academies.
From a talent standpoint, there's no question they bring back the best talent.
Yeah.
I mean, Horvath, Teska, Heidenreich. But just, yeah. You get where I'm coming from, though. It's not that they don't have the best talent. It's just I don't think they're going to be as run dominant as those other teams.
Sure.
And they were 76 yards behind Army last year. So it's a lot of this is going to have to happen.
No, that's totally fair. Buy, sell, hold. Syracuse will throw for 1,800 less yards passing in 25 than in 24.
You know, when I saw this, I kind of laughed at first. I was like, come on, dude. Like 1,800 yards. Like, man, you must really not like Steve Angeli. But then I looked at the numbers and I was like, if they throw for 1,800 fewer yards, you're 3,000 yards. That's still not bad. But I still think they'll be over 3,000 yards. Just the nature of the offense. And they've got some players there. I think they'll be over. I'll say this. I think they're going to throw for at least 1,000 yards less, about 1,000 yards less. But 1,000 yards less puts them at 3,800 still. That's more reasonable in the 12 to 13 game season. So I can't go all the way to 1,800, but I had to, once I looked at the numbers and I was like, yeah, they were like almost 4,900 last year. So I had to do a double take, but I'm comfortable saying it'll be more than 1,800.
I would be
less. It'll be less than 1,800. It'll be closer to 1,000. Excuse me, I said that wrong.
I would be more comfortable buying this because I definitely understand where you're coming from on this one, D-Troll, if I had more faith in Syracuse's running game. But the way the offense is set up, I just don't. I'm going to sell this because I still think they're going to have to throw for a lot. I'm in the same camp as Brian. It will definitely be less. I don't see Ricky Collins or Steve Angeli throwing for almost 4,800 yards in a season again, including postseason. But I don't think it'll be 1,800 less.
Yeah, agree.
I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will throw for 1,100 more yards this season than last year.
I'm going to sell that. 1,100 more yards gets them to over 4,200 passing yards. and that's a lot. I mean, if they throw for 3,800 yards this year, and let's say they play 16 games again, that's 237.5 yards per game. That's a good season. And there's going to be some games they for them it's going to be a good season. Part of it is just the games, Trev. I mean, if they play 13, 14 games, like let's just say they play a normal 13-game season, that's 84.6 more yards per game. But if they play 16 games, that's just an extra 68.8 yards per game for a team that averaged 190 something passing yards per game. That's doable. But that's just you know what I honestly think? If you would have asked me this question, Notre Dame's going to average 69 more yards per game passing than last year, I might have just kind of bought it. Like, yeah, I think so. But when you put the 1,100 number on it, like, dang, that's a lot of freaking yards, for a first-year quarterback. Yeah, I'm gonna sell it. It's certainly possible, but I just 1,100 yard, that gets them, if they play 16 games again, that gets them over 40. Well, it doesn't even matter. The games is just, however, that's almost 4,200 yards. Actually, almost 4,300 yards, because 1,100 would be 4,270. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I'm going to sell that, but I don't sell it in like, dude, they won't even come close. If they play long enough, they'll come close, but I don't think it'll be quite that.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this one too, as much as I don't want to. It also comes down to how many times in the second half are they going to be throwing. I think of the Purdue game. I think of the Stanford game. If Navy goes any way like it did last season, I don't know how much they're going to be asking CJ or Kenny or maybe Hebert to be airing it out or dropping back and passing. Especially with the stable of running back rooms that you have right now. They're going to need a lot of touches as the season progresses. Didn't lose anybody in the spring portal. So I think it will definitely be more. There is no doubt in my mind that they will pass for more and significantly more than what they did last season. 1,100 is a bit of a stretch.
And the 1,100 too factors in when I look at what that number means. I mean, that's 4,270. Is how I'm going to have to throw for. That's the most in program history, I'm pretty sure. Because I don't think Brady's backup in 2005 threw for all that many yards. Let me go look. That would be the only season that it would come close to that. Let me go see 2005. How many yards did David Wolke throw for that year? David Wolke threw for 28, and Marty Mooney threw 16. So they that year threw for 39.63. So you're talking about 300 yards more than you've ever had in a season. Now, again, that team played 13 games, and let's be honest, if Brady Quinn would have played 15, 16 games that year, he's well over 4,200 yards by himself, much less the team. But that was also by far the most prolific passing season in program history from a yard standpoint. So that's a lot. I'm going to have to sell for now, but I think it'll be easily 500-600 more.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start getting up to 1,100, it'll be closer to 1,100 than it'll be 500, in my opinion.
Fair, yeah.
4,300 yards is a lot.
Buy, sell, hold. Ole Miss will throw for under 3,500 passing yards for the first time since 2022.
Sell. I don't know that they're going to be as dominant throwing the football next year as they were this past year. And part of that was because of their run game. When you had some injuries, Henry Parrish got hurt last year. Logan Diggs was hurt last year. He only played one game. If Logan Diggs is healthy, I think they're going to be more effective running the football. I do. I think having Logan Diggs back, got a couple portal guys in. Dominic Thomas comes back, who was, kind of, in the rotation last year, carried the ball 42 times. And then Austin Simmons is a decent athlete that can run. I think they'll run the ball more this year, so I don't think they're going to need to throw it as much as they did last year, Trev, when they threw for, was it 45-61 last year? They won't throw for that amount because they won't need to, but they're not going to be over 1,000 yards less than what they were last year. I like Austin Simmons a lot, and I'm banking that on very little information. I mean, I evaluated him in high school. He's the kid, if you remember, graduated like 2 years early. because he's like wicked smart. He's already graduated from Ole Miss. He's a wicked smart kid. But it's just more so it's one drive, and it's a bit hypocritical for me to base that off of one drive. But like that's a drive that you overhype. Coming off the bench against Georgia and shredding Georgia on that drive. I mean, that was the easiest touchdown drive Ole Miss had all game. Was the one Austin Simmons let him down. And it had just come after Georgia had just scored because Jackson Dart threw a pick on the previous drive, got hurt, I think, on the play where we got picked. Georgia goes down and scores, goes up, I think, 7-0. And then I'm going to pull this up because I think I'm remembering the sequence of events correctly. But he comes in, Austin Simmons comes in for one drive. I think at the time it was actually also raining at the time. At least it was a bit of an ugly day, and he leads them right down the field on I'm pulling it up now. Yeah, a 75-yard drive, 10 plays, and just shreds Georgia on that drive. Just shreds them. And starts the drive off with an 11-yard pass to Antoine Wells. He goes for 11 to Daquan Wright. They have 2 runs that go for nothing. 3rd and 11, he completes a pass to Jordan Watkins for 10 yards. On 4th and 1, he completes a pass to Caden Lee for 12 yards, throws an incomplete pass, 3-yard gain. Then he hits another pass over the middle for 20 yards, and then Ulysses Bentley goes in for a touchdown. Just shredded Georgia. And then, of course, they went on to win that game 28-10. But that impressed me, man. They didn't get sacked twice, didn't fumble. They didn't settle for a field goal. He went right down the field and just said, here we go. So that impressed me. That really impressed me. What say you, Trev?
Yeah, no, it was a solid drive. Definitely one that I remember from that game for sure. I'm selling this one as well. I do not see Ole Miss having, as a team, 1,000 less passing yards than what they had this past year. I like Jackson Dart. I liked him more than some going into the NFL draft. I liked him more than some did last season in college. I understand that they lost him. I understand that their receivers are a little bit of a question mark going into the season. Not crazy, but
yeah, it's a little. I mean, you're losing Trey Harris and basically replacing him with Trey Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing what was the other kid they had, replacing him with Dejon Stribling. But I like Caden Lee's a really good slot player.
Yeah,
he had 57 catches for 874 yards last year. I did that breakdown of how Jaden Greathouse compares to the other top slot receivers. Caden Lee was the only one who had like more yards per target, and I think he had a better. It was like more yards per. He had a higher yards per target. I think he was like the only one that did. There was like 2 other stats that he was actually as good, or he was the closest one to Greathouse, or was even better than Greathouse in a couple categories. So he was a very underrated player for Ole Miss last year, and he comes back. And then tight end, they lost their tight end, but they've got players there. They got the Luke Haas kid transferred in. They've got players there. The question is going to be their offensive line. Can their offensive line protect the quarterback? But they won't have the weapons they had last year. But like you said, Trevor, 1,000 yards worth. And Logan Diggs is a really good weapon out of the backfield, as we remember at Notre Dame, which will help also.
Yep. 1,000 yards is pretty steep. I'm selling it. Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. These teams will have a 1,000-yard regular season running back and a 500-yard rushing quarterback. We can go
one at a time,
here.
yeah.
Washington.
Buy. Have you seen the kid that Washington is going to have a quarterback this year?
Yeah.
He's fun
dynamic.
to watch.
Yeah.
Joe, I mean, I think the bigger argument is, will Jonah Coleman get to 1,000 yards this year?
Mm-hmm.
He was at 1,053 last year. And he's going to split some of those carries a little bit this year, as long as the line holds up, which they should be a little bit better this year. But I'll buy that one.
We're in the same boat. Clemson.
Buy. They were not there last year. Cade Klubnik had 463 yards last year. I think with some of those questions at running back, they're going to need him to run a little bit more this year. So I'm gonna buy that one, but it'll be close.
I think I'm more confident that Cade Klubnik will reach 500 than one of their running backs reaches 1,000.
Yep, because they're going to be a little bit of a by committee type of approach this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think they'll get somebody there, but I don't. I do, but that's a very fair question, and that's a bit of my question for the next one too.
Yep. So Oklahoma then buy, sell, hold.
If Jaden Knott's healthy all year, then buy. But that's my question: can Jaden Knott stay healthy? That's the kid they got in from Cal. Really good quarterback. I mean, really good running back. I like him quite a bit, but he's a guy that's struggled a little bit to stay healthy at times in his career. Actually, he faced Notre Dame a couple years ago, but last year Jaden Knott only rushed for 385 yards on average 3.3 per carry. He only played 10 games, so he was a little bit banged up last year. In 2023, he was a 1,300-yard rusher, and in 2022, as a true freshman, he rushed for 897 yards. So last year's not indicative of who Jaden Knott is as a running back. The first 2 years are, but he was banged up last year. Will he be healthier this year? And I still don't know that Oklahoma is going to have a great offensive line. Like they were pretty bad last year. How much better are they going to be? And to your point, I'm confident that John Mateer will rush for 500 yards, but am not overly confident that they'll have a 1,000-yard back because of Jaden Knott's health. If you tell me Jaden Knott plays 13 games next year and the O-line is solid, then yes, they will get to that number. But I don't have faith in either one of those. I don't have definitive faith in either one of those things. So I'm going to sell them. But if Ott's healthy, then I'd feel a lot better about it.
That's fair. Fair enough. Texas A&M.
That's one of the easier buys on here.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question that I have is more so, will Marcel Reed get the 500 yards more so than will they have a 1,000-yard back barring injury? But Marcel Reed rushed for over 500 yards last year, and he didn't even start the whole season. So, I buy that one with a lot of comfort. Like I don't have any issue buying that one. And it's not like Marcel Reed's rushing numbers were driven by all the games when Le'Veon Moss was out. They had to rely on him. I mean, he had 83 in his start against Florida, 91 in his start against Bowling Green, 62 in his start in the game against LSU, which Le'Veon Moss was also part of. So his attempts went up after Moss got hurt, but his yards didn't go up because they could then focus on him more. You were more scared of him than you were Amari Daniels. But once Le'Veon Moss comes back, that's not going to be the case. So as long as he's healthy, that's an easy buy for me.
Yep.
That's my question, though. He got hurt late in the year. Like, how healthy will he be next at the beginning of the season? That's a question for me. But my understanding is he's going to be healthy, and he's a very good back. So I'm going to buy that one.
Yep, you and I see that the same. Florida.
Now, this is an interesting one because, number one, I don't think DJ Lagway is a guy that's going to run for that many yards. DJ Lagway is a good athlete, but DJ Lagway likes to throw the football. He's going to use a lot of his mobility to throw the football, number one. He only rushed for 101 yards last year. That's it. Number two, I don't know how much you want to have a guy with a not bum shoulder, but a guy that's dealing with shoulder injuries. How much you're going to want to run that kid? And I think Florida's got a pretty decent backfield. I don't think you need DJ Lagway to be a heavy ball carrier, so I'm going to sell that one. I think DJ Lagway, in theory, is capable of rushing for 500 yards, but they didn't use him that way last year, and I definitely would not feel great about trying to use him that way this year when he's been dealing with shoulder issues in the offseason. So I'm gonna sell that one.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you on Florida. And then the last one, buy, sell, hold, Notre Dame.
Also going to sell that one. I think, number one, the debate for Notre Dame is not will they have a 1,000-yard runner and a running back and a 500-yard quarterback. The question for Notre Dame is going to be, are they going to have 2,000-yard rushers? That's the question for them. And look, if Kenny's a starting quarterback, that's much more possible. But even then, I think people overstate Kenny's running desire. Kenny will run and scramble, but Kenny's not a guy. He's 6'2", 205, 207 pounds. He's a good athlete, but he's a drop back quarterback that's athletic. I don't know that he's a guy that you're going to say, hey, let's give him 150 carries like you gave Riley Leonard last year. That's not who Kenny Minchie is. Could he get to 500 based on scrambles and some of that? Sure. I mean, Ian Book did. So I could see that. I mean, Ian Book's another guy, Trev, that Notre Dame didn't have a whole lot of designed runs for Ian Book. I mean, he was not a guy that you were out there running quarterback power all the time. And he would have the occasional short yardage sneak, or they used to run a play. It almost like never worked. I don't ever remember it working, but they just kept running it. They would run that outside zone to the quarterback. You remember that? They would snap it to Ian Book for an outside zone, and he was never good at it. But he still had 485 yards in 2020, and again, season only played 12 games. He had 546 in 2019, 280 in 2018, and didn't start till the fourth, fifth game of the year. So, I mean, Ian basically did that twice, and they didn't have a ton of designed runs for him, but he was a big scrambler. I don't know that CJ is going to do I can see CJ be more of a climb the pocket. You think he's about to run, and then he drops one behind you. I'm going to sell that one, but I don't think it's going to be. It's not a crazy projection, especially if Notre Dame plays 15, 16 games again. But I think they'll fall slightly short of that.
Yeah, if CJ is the starting quarterback, I'm going to sell it. If Kenny's the starting quarterback, I would buy it. And it's not because I think Kenny Minchie's the dual threat that people make him out to be, but in what your breakdown of Ian Book is who I was going to reference. If Kenny reaches 500 yards, it would be in the same fashion that Ian Book would get it. So, yep.
A few more designed runs.
Yeah.
But if Kenny's a starter and they play 15, 16 games, then I would probably buy this with some confidence. But no, I think CJ's good. I still think CJ's going to start. Those are really good submissions, Detroit Hunter. I love those college football submissions. Those are fun. Thank you for that.
Yep. Those are really good. Buy, sell, hold from Domer Grizz. The days where Notre Dame is starting an undersized or under-talented try-hard guy at any position are gone as long as Freeman is the head coach.
I buy that because of the under-talented part. I think the try-hard part is they'll still like that's Jack Kaiser. Like Jack Kaiser was not a great player because he was 6'3", 245. He was a try-hard guy. But Jack Kaiser was also talented. That's why he was able to overcome his lack of size because he was a try-hard guy and he was athletic and talented. So, like, when I think of that, I think of Joe Schmidt. I think of, Dan Fox, guys like that. I don't see that. Undersized, I guess it depends on what you mean by undersized. I don't care as much about being undersized in today's linebackers. I mean, Pitt's linebacker, the Biles kid last year, Rasheem Biles, he's 215 pounds, 6'1", 215 pounds. He's a machine, tackling machine. Game's different. The undersized part doesn't bother me as much. The under-talented part, they won't do that. I believe that. And I'm using linebackers as an example because that's the primary position. But like, let's say another Sean Crawford comes along. Well, he's undersized, but he's a top 100 talent. Sean Crawford was an incredibly talented player before the injuries. And even after his first knee injury, he was still pretty good. And then after his Achilles injury, he still was a starter at Notre Dame for multiple seasons. That's the kind of athlete he was. So he was not under-talented. He was undersized. I don't care as much about undersized. Howard Cross is undersized. He was an All-American in 2023. I think the under-talented part is more of what I'm concerned about. There'll still be some undersized guys.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, they signed Bubba Frazier, who's going to be, 5'9"? He's undersized. That guy can fly. You know what I mean? He's dynamic. I think they got a shot to get Braden Robinson. He's undersized, but he's dynamic. So I think the undersized part, they'll have some undersized guys, but I don't care about that as long as you're an elite football player or a big-time football player. The under-talented try-hard part, that's what they won't have anymore under Marcus Freeman. That part I buy.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. The talent level, the ceiling has been raised so much with Freeman coming into town, but I don't lose sleep over the undersized part depending on the position. Look, is it intimidating to look at on a depth chart? Maybe not. I made that mistake early on in the season with D'Angelo Pons at Indiana. I was like, oh, a 5'9" corner? Okay. And
in today's game? Right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's a top 15, top 10 cornerback coming back in college football this year.
I'd comfortably say he's top 10.
Yeah. Like I don't get too worried about that aspect. I mean, after bringing in guys like Leonard Moore, who's 6'2", Carson Hobbs is like 6'1". I mean, Mark Zachary is like a 5'11", 6-foot kid. Dallas Golden, same thing. I mean, but they're uber talented. So I don't buy too much into that. So you and I see that the same.
And again, I want to respond to something here because Andrew Gilmore made a comment. He said, or asked the question, is Luke Talich a try-hard guy? But that's what I'm saying. It's the under-talented part that is what I push back on, because Kingston Viliamas is a try-hard guy, but he's very talented. Drake Bowen's a try-hard guy, but he's very talented. There's a lot of guys that are try-hard guys, but they're very talented. Jeremiah Love's a try-hard guy. I mean, just go look at some of his blocking that he did last year. It's the under-talented try-hard guys. So like Joe Schmidt, every game he played gave you everything he had. I don't know that I ever watched Joe Schmidt play where I didn't think that young man left everything he had out on the field.
Yeah.
I can't ever question that. Well, there are a lot of games where I'm like, his lack of talent was absolutely exposed in this game. There's a lot of that, especially in 2015 after his leg injury. Because let's be honest, Joe Schmidt before the leg injury was a much better player than Joe Schmidt after the leg injury.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so Andrew, he is a try-hard guy. It's the part I would push back on is the under-talented try-hard guy. There's a lot of try-hard guys. And I know the expression he means. It's like you're using that to just specifically point to a type of player, and I get that. But that player has to go with the under-talented part.
Mm-hmm.
The try-hard, in quotes, signifies a under-talented guy. And Luke Talich is not under-talented, in my opinion.
100%. Because on the flip side, we've seen players come in to Notre Dame who were super talented but weren't try-hard guys.
That's right.
And we know what happened with them.
Right. So that's why I say, like, I understand what Domer Grizz means by try-hard, and then Andrew also put the try-hard in quotes because that associates with the lack of talent part.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't view Luke Talich that way, because I actually think Luke Talich is pretty talented.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. That's a good follow-up question. Somebody asked about Donovan Heinisch. I don't view him as an under-talented, as a try-hard guy either, because he's undersized, but Donovan is very talented.
Mm-hmm.
And if he wasn't talented, he would not have the success that he has because he's undersized.
Yeah.
If he wasn't very talented, he would not be effective at 275 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Just not as an inside guy. Who had the game-winning sack against Georgia? Donovan Heinisch. So it more so refers to like a Joe Schmidt, a guy a Tony Springman, a guy who maybe wasn't all that talented that found a way to make it and be successful at Notre Dame, but then they would go out and struggle against some of the better talents. Like Mike Golick Jr. I'd fit into that category. You look at the offensive line he was on, he wasn't nearly as talented as, forget Chris Watt and Zach Martin. He wasn't even as talented as Christian Lombard. He wasn't as talented as Braxton Love. But why was he successful? Because he was a try-hard guy, meaning he gave great effort, great technique, smart football player, and got the most out of his ability. And that to me is a quote we would consider a try-hard guy. It's not a walk-on like Mike Anello, because Mike Anello could play coverage, but he wasn't going to go out there and line up a cornerback against Notre Dame or against anyone and be successful. So that's kind of how I look at that and explain that. It's sometimes people make it to be an insult, but I don't really view it that way. It's just a recognition of this guy just doesn't have the ability of other people around him, but he gives you great effort, and he's able to find a niche. And that's why I look at a guy like Mike Golick Jr. compared to a Zach Martin, Chris Watt. Why was he able to start and be part of a really good 12-0 team and starter on the offensive line, playing some guard, playing some center? Because he was a try-hard guy. Smart, plays hard, gives you everything he's got, plays a good technique, smart, does what the coaches ask, and just leaves it all out on the field. I never watched a game where Mike Golick Jr. played where I wasn't like, dude left everything he had out on the field today. Never once. But he had to be that way to be able to start at Notre Dame with this talent level.
Yep, for sure.
I like that submission. That's a really good submission, because that was an issue we saw a lot. There was always those couple guys,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Biso holds summer enrollee freshmen who we hope will contribute this year will actually be more limited than we think due to the late start, not being here for the spring. This happened to Lambert last year, but I think what will happen, I think it will happen to some of the others as well, and we should temper our expectations for what we'll get out of the summer freshmen this year.
So this is a rebranding of a question that he asked last week. And I'm trying to pull the question up again, but let me just pull this up here real quick. So, because he had a preface on there, but we didn't have room for the preface, but I want to be able to read it so that way we can respectfully respond to the submission. But what he said was, let me get down here. Domer, where are you, Domer Grizz? Okay, here we go. He said, last week I asked this and you ended up focusing on O-line. So this week I'm curious about other positions as well. I don't think we focus on the O-line. What we said was, in order for this to the guys who weren't able to contribute as summer enrollees tended to be offensive linemen. And that's who I'm more concerned about. Some defensive linemen, but I don't know that we are asking a lot of I don't know that there's a lot of excitement or thought or concern or anything like that for the defensive line to come in and play as freshmen. I don't think that being a summer enrollee is going to have any impact on the guys that we're talking about other than offensive linemen. I don't think it's going to have any impact on Dallas Golden. I don't think it's going to have any impact on Mark Zachary. I don't think it's going to have any impact on the linebackers because they weren't going to play anyway. The position that we're primarily looking at this for is the secondary, because that's really the only group of early enrollees that we're looking at and thinking they're going to help a lot. No one's expecting the D-line to do much. No one's expecting the linebackers who weren't here in the spring to do much, not because they're late enrollees, because they're just not play right away on defense guys. If Anthony Sacca was an early enrollee, my opinion of his ability to crack the linebacker unit this year would be the same as it is now, which is it's unlikely, barring multiple injuries. So there's only two positions where I think you're going to see freshman, summer enrollee freshmen, where anyone even thinks they're going to play, and that's secondary and James Flanagan, who we talked a lot about yesterday. Or was that yesterday that we talked about that? But maybe it was earlier in the show today. But that's really the only two guys that we look at. It was yesterday when we were talking about the offense for the summer. We're talking about James Flanagan. Those are the only two positions where I think anyone's even expecting anything from the summer enrollees. And I don't think being summer enrollees are going to hurt those guys at all. Let's not forget that Notre Dame has had two freshman All-Americans at cornerback in the last 3 years, and neither one of them are earlier enrollees. Benjamin Morrison and Leonard Moore both showed up in the summer and went on to be All-Americans. I just don't think that matters as much for skill positions as it does linemen. So, and then the other positions like D-line, I don't know anybody that's really expecting any of those guys to really do a whole lot this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter whether even if they were early enrollees, it wouldn't have mattered. So yeah. So, and Andrew Gilmore asked, was Christopher Burgess a summer or an early? Maybe he can force some PT. He's capable of it. He's a summer enrollee, but we've talked about how hopefully maybe Burgess could, but we're not talking about him being counted on to help as a freshman. It's if he's good enough, he can force the way on the field, but we're not looking at it saying like, oh, they're going to need him to play. They're going to really need him to play. We're not talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I sell this.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hope and need are two different things. You can still hope that the true freshman class can contribute. I mean, Madden Faramo was an early enrollee, and we don't know if he's going to contribute this fall on defense just because of the room that he's in.
Bingo.
Let alone the linebackers who weren't early enrollees. So need and hope are two different things. I think if you can differentiate between the two, I still absolutely hope that Brandon Logan could be a force on special teams. I don't know what that's going to look like for him this year, but I don't think a hindrance to him too much will be the fact that he wasn't here from end of February to end of April.
I agree.
Buy, sell, hold from Aiden Benami. Notre Dame is keeping the artist formerly known as Charles J. at guard because he's more talented than Knapp, and maintaining up the middle is more important for a first-year starter. Makes all the sense when it gets broken down.
No, sell that. That's not the reason why. I don't think it's because look, if I'm a freshman starting quarterback, your left tackle is every bit as important as up the middle. Like, you've got to protect the blind side of a quarterback, especially a first-year starter. Because, Trev, you played quarterback. I'm curious if you felt the same way, but I always felt like when I was a quarterback, high school, college, whatever, the up the middle pressure had the most impact on me, but it's the one that bothered me the least. Meaning it was harder to step into throws, but I could see it coming. I could brace for a hit. I could spin out. I could scramble, whatever. The throws, the plays that get in your head as a quarterback are the ones you can't see. And that's coming from your blind side. You get hit a couple times from your blind side, how you going to be? So I think it really, it's simple. Notre Dame believes that the best 5-man combination is with Charles Jagasaw at guard and Anthony Knapp at tackle, because they think that Jagasaw can be an elite guard, and they have a lot of confidence in Anthony Knapp's second year being a lot better than his first year from a pass pro standpoint. That's how they see it. We can agree or disagree or whatever else, but I don't think it's about, well, we're going to move Jagasaw there, even though he's more talented, because we think it's more important to solidify the inside. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just, it might be a side benefit of it, solidifying the inside, but if they're not going to sacrifice pass pro at left tackle to be better up the middle in pass pro. They're just, Joe Rudolph would have to be a really dumb football coach to make that decision. And I don't think Joe Rudolph is a dumb football coach. You don't get to where Joe Rudolph is right now by being a dumb football coach. Jeff Quinn was not a dumb football coach. He just wasn't a very good one at this level. He wasn't dumb, though. He's a smart guy. So I'll sell that.
Yeah, I'm selling it as well. From personal experience, the blind side is very important. And look, the blind side is important whether you're a first-year starter or you're a 4-year starter. I mean, it's the hits that you can't see coming are going to get into your head a lot quicker than the ones that you can't see coming, plain and simple. So I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold. A position coach has many factors to it, but continually missing in recruiting can cause someone to lose their job, even if their coaching and other areas are solid.
That's fair. It's a buy. If they're elite as a position coach, they won't get fired because of recruiting. But if you're just solid as a position coach and you're continuously getting beat in the recruiting trail, you're going to get fired. And you should, because a solid football coach doesn't overcome an average roster.
Yep.
An elite football coach can, but not a solid one. So I'll buy that.
Fair. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will have a 2027 quarterback commit before week 1 this season.
Buy.
Love it.
Yeah, buy.
Buy, sell, hold. These people need to go to therapy and work on common sense and jealousy.
I don't know what that was in reference to. I looked at it, and I still don't know what that was in reference to, but I'm going to buy it.
I know what it's in reference to.
Okay.
When we were on with Bill Bender, he made a comment saying Notre Dame needs to join the Big Ten. So he was saying anybody
Gotcha.
saying Notre Dame needs to join a conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think. Okay, so that's what it was in reference to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Bill Bender needs therapy because he has that view. I do think he needs to work on his jealousy a little bit. I don't think look, common sense, if you don't know the history of Notre Dame, would tell you in the shifting landscape, it would make sense for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten. If you are looking at it from an outside point of view and a surface level, and you don't have the detail about things that we have, then yeah, I would say that looks common sense. It's common sense for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten. What annoys me is when people are just so adamant about it, they can't give Notre Dame their respect for what they do. But if Bill knew, I have a feeling because like in Bill's case, he made some assumptions of things he thought. And he said he was making an assumption. And Trev, I loved it how you looked it up. And because what was the comment? He goes, I'll bet that the TV numbers for the Michigan, it was Michigan USC, and then Penn State USC games were close to Notre Dame, and they weren't even close. Notre Dame almost doubled the Penn State game, and I believe tripled the Michigan game, correct?
Mm-hmm.
As I think what the numbers you gave me showed. I'm actually going to find that.
It was almost tripled the Michigan USC game, and it
Yeah.
definitely doubled the USC Penn State game.
Because okay, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was like 7 point something for Notre Dame and then 4 point something for the second one. But the point is, it wasn't close. But in his head, he's thinking, as a Midwestern Big Ten guy, he's thinking, well, of course the numbers are going to be as good for that game as what it is, because around here, everybody was watching that game. But that's the whole point. The only people watching that game were Big Ten people. It wasn't a national game, where for the Notre Dame USC game it's more of a national game.
Mm-hmm.
It's considered a bigger game. And so that's why it just like that's why it is what it is. And that's what people have to understand a little bit, Trevor, is I don't think people quite understand just how much of a money machine and a revenue machine and getting your eyes on machine that Notre Dame is.
Mm-hmm.
And once they realize that, then they kind of understand a little bit more. But I think that's the mistake that Bill made, is still thinking that like as many people care about that game, because in his frame of reference, he's a Midwestern guy. So where he's from, majority of people will be interested in that game and watch that game. But that's the difference of being a Midwestern school and being a national brand. And that's the point you and I always point out, is like, look, this isn't just about, are you popular in your market? Are you highly ranked? Are you respected? Notre Dame's a different draw. And I also don't think people understand, because Notre Dame hasn't advertised it. I have a pretty good idea of what Notre Dame's current TV revenue is. And it's not far off from what the Big Ten is. And when you throw in what Notre Dame made in the playoffs last year, I don't know this part for a fact, but I'd be willing to bet that Notre Dame last year brought home more money off of TV plus playoff revenue than anyone in the SEC brought home in last year. Because they got what was the number in it being, Trevor, for Notre Dame last year for what they brought home for the playoff?
It was like 34 million.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm confident in saying that Notre Dame is making about 50 or more on the TV deal plus the ACC deal. They were close to 20 on the ACC last year. I don't think people realize how much money Notre Dame brings home on their TV deal. And so, yeah, that's just one of those things. But it's not so much common sense and jealousy. I just say people need to do their homework a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do a little bit more than surface level digging into that. I do think there's some jealousy there, but yeah. Therapy, not so much.
Bill Bender aside, I do think people need more common sense. So I will buy that in the general populace of people. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold from Lucky Duck 512. Will Black coming in and being ahead of schedule and pushing to play would be one of the best things for the line this fall.
Behind the starter stepping up and playing well, yeah, I'll buy that, because Will Black coming in and pushing to play is going to make Anthony Knapp a better player. Because one of two things happens. Anthony Knapp gets a lot better, and Notre Dame is end up being golden at left tackle, or Anthony Knapp doesn't get better, and then they just put Will Black in for him. The other part, too, is if Will Black comes in and he's ready to play as a freshman, and there's an injury to someone else, you can then maybe consider, okay, now is the time to make the move of Anthony Knapp to guard or center because of an injury, and Will's ready to take over at tackle, assuming he's the next in line ready to play guy. You may not – otherwise, if a guy goes down and Will's not ready to play, you're just going to leave Knapp where he is and put in the backup whoever, Sullivan Absher or Joe Otting or, Chris Tarrick or Kirby Lambert at right tackle or whoever. But if Will comes in and he's playing at a super high level and you're like, boo, this guy's hard to keep off the field, and somebody goes down, then you've got to consider, okay, who are we going to move into that position? And so I think that would certainly be very good for the offensive line. But it's behind other things like Anthony Knapp's game makes a big jump. Jagasol's healthy. Craig's healthy. Shrouth takes a jump. I mean, those things are more important to me than anything Will Black does. But there's definitely some benefits to Will Black coming in and playing really well and pushing, because it forces Anthony Knapp to take his game to another level, which is good for Notre Dame.
Yep. For the same reasons that you just listed off, I'm buying this because it says one of the best. Definitely not a necessity. I would love for that to happen because of kind of the, I guess you could say, like the secondary things that would come with that. Anthony Knapp would then raise his level of game. I would like to also see Gerby Lambert come back to health at some point in this offseason before the fall. So yeah, but it would be one of those. It'd be one of them for sure. For sure. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will offer a 2027 quarterback by the end of June.
Buy,
sell, hold. Mike Martin's biggest contribution so far has been giving Coach Freeman more time to be a coach and less time dealing with the administrative side.
Buy. Yeah, that's a definite buy. I think Marcus Freeman trusts Mike Martin more to handle roster management from a negotiation standpoint. Meaning, hey, this kid wants this kid wants that kid wants that. I don't know that Marcus Freeman trusted anyone to have full control over that before last year. I think he trusts Mike Martin to do that. So I think that's an absolute buy.
Yep, absolutely. That along with, and this is just a little bit more granular than just saying the administrative side, but getting some of the players to stay who are thinking about the spring portal as well is also huge. But that falls under the umbrella of the administrative side of the job. So absolutely. Buy, sell, hold. Eli Raridan has a Jeremiah Love 2024 type breakout this season, becoming one of the best tight ends in the country.
I'll buy that as a possibility. Yeah. I'm not ready to predict it yet because Eli Raridan's got to show me that he can be healthy for an entire season and be that guy. But there's no doubt in my mind that Eli Raridan can't immediately become, in 1 year as a starter, one of the top 3 to 4 tight ends in college football. Absolutely buy that.
Yep, for sure. Buy relative to like a tight end type of breakout.
Like, I don't think Lucky Duck is saying he's going to have 1,125 yards and 17 touchdowns. Yeah. I just think he's, like you said, Jeremiah went from being a guy stepping into the lineup, replacing a stud, to one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in all of college football last year. So he was definitely top 5 in my opinion. I think Eli Raridan can certainly do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It just won't look the same numbers wise.
Buy, sell, hold from Crable. Assuming CJ Carr earns a starting quarterback job and assuming he remains healthy, buy, sell, hold that CJ Carr will have more career passing touchdowns than Joe Montana, 25, and Joe Theismann at 31 combined. So 56 career passing touchdowns.
Oh, buy. I mean, if CJ Carr is a 2-year starter at Notre Dame and he goes to the NFL, I promise you he averages more than 28 touchdowns a year.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't go early to the NFL and he stays for 4 years and is a 3-year starter, he'll blow past that, blow way past that. Yeah. And those are different eras.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Theismann, it's funny, Joe Theismann only threw 31 touchdowns, but Joe Theismann owns the Notre Dame all-time passing yards in a game record. He threw for over 500 yards in a game in college. He threw for 526 against USC in 1970. What's funny, however, is Joe Theismann, I don't think he threw for 3,000 yards that year. Let me pull that up. Joe Theismann college stats in 70. He threw for 2,429 yards, 16 touchdowns, 14 picks. It's a different era. And they played 10 games, but 500 of those 2,400 yards came in one game against USC. It's just a very different era.
Yeah. That is crazy, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definite buy for me.
Like, you wouldn't have thought a guy who threw for 2,400 yards as a 10-game starter would have the single game record. And you know who's number 2? He has the second best single game performance of all time.
Jack Cohn.
Yes, sir. Number 3, Brady Quinn. 4, Deshaun Kaiser. 5, Brady Quinn. 6, Jimmy Clausen. 7, Everett Golson. 8, 9, and 10 is all Brady Quinn. So there's a lot of Brady Quinn in that. 5 of the 10 are Brady Quinn. Jimmy only has one, which I think speaks to how good he was because he didn't have a bunch of just, crazy games. And then like Jack Cohn's number 2 in the bowl game against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl.
Joe Theismann got over a fifth of his passing yards in a season in one game.
10-game season. Yeah.
Lordy.
Yep.
Buy, sell, hold from JG Ytown. Notre Dame will have 3 running backs over 800 total yards and 2 wide receivers with 1,000 receiving yards, or Notre Dame defense will lead college football in takeaways.
I'm going to sell the 3 running backs over 800 yards. Yeah, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to sell that one. We're going to do this one at a time.
Yeah. Total yards, I think that makes it more interesting than 800, like just flat out rushing yards, but I'm selling that too. I think they get 2 for sure. 2 for sure.
Even if Aeneas is the 3rd down back and the 11 personnel back, I just don't see him getting 800 yards. The only way I could see a 3rd back getting to 800 yards is if, let's say, Aeneas was the punt returner and kick returner. But I don't know that that's what JG Ytown had in mind.
True.
So I just don't see him getting to that.
Then buy, sell, hold 2 wide receivers with 1,000 receiving yards.
Sell. I just want to see one get to 1,000. But is it possible? It's possible. But I don't know that this is the year that happens. Maybe down the road, but I just no.
Yeah.
Which one would you say is more likely?
The wide receivers. Yeah. I think the wide receivers would be like that 3rd running back would have to. I'm thinking of the different ways that they would have to be able to do it. And I mean, 500 rushing, 300 receiving, or be like a special teams guy. I think the receivers would be more likely, but I am going to sell it as well. I think it's going to look very like. I'll say this. I think it's. No, I'm not going to say that because I don't think it'd be more likely. Never mind. But no, I don't see 2 wide receivers with 1,000. So I'm selling that one. And then last one, buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame defense will lead college football in takeaways.
That is possible. That is possible. They were close. Didn't they lead? I thought they led in.
They led in overall takeaways this past year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they were first last year. So, and I think Notre Dame's at least a semifinal team. So that's certainly possible this year. There's still the unknown of, is Chris Ash's defense going to be as like turnover centric as Al Golden's? I don't know that, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Buy, sell, hold. Jeremiah Love. We'll do these individually as well. Buy, sell, hold. Jeremiah Love wins the Doak Walker Award.
I'm going to buy that.
Love it. Buy, sell, hold. Malachi Fields wins the Bolitnikoff Award.
Sell.
Yep. Leonard Moore or Christian Gray wins the Jim Thorpe Award.
Sell, because the Jim Thorpe Award's the dumbest award in college football. And
agreed.
If Leonard Moore's the best DB, best corner in college football, that lessens his chances of winning.
If you had to rank these in order of most likely to least likely, how would you order it?
Most likely Doak Walker, second most likely the Thorpe Award, because there is the possibility that they come to their senses and, make a good selection, which would mean either Caleb Downs or Leonard Moore type of, if they all play to their potential. There's a chance that Christian Gray could win it in the same way that Kobe Bryant won it back in, was it 22 or 21?
21.
Because they threw at him a lot more, because they didn't want to throw at Sauce Gardner. So he put up great numbers. Like I could see Christian Gray having 6-7 picks this year. If, teams are just like, we're just not throwing at Leonard Moore.
Yeah.
And then winning it that way. I'm not saying he's going to have, I'm just saying I could see him doing that. And then that would cause him to win it.
Sure.
Even though anyone with a brain would be like, well, that was because he had a great year, but the numbers were inflated by the fact that just nobody wanted to throw number 2. But and the Bolitnikoff is last, because the Bolitnikoff, I mean, if let me see if there's, because there's lots of great stuff on Google. So stats for Bolitnikoff winners.
I will say I know that Travis Hunter had the least amount of yards of a Biletnikoff winner since like the 90s.
But he had more than Marvin Harrison from the year before. Like Travis Hunter last year had 1,258 yards. Marvin Harrison the year before, 1,211. Jalen Hyatt, 1,267. Jordan Addison, 1,593. Devontae Smith, 1,856. Jamar Chase, 1,780. Jerry Jeudy, 1,315. Yeah. James Washington, 1,549, 1,524, 1,363. The last time a guy had less than 1,200 yards to win the Biletnikoff Award was in 2008. So, is that right? Did he have that many yards last year? Hold on a second. Let me go look at that real quick. Is that right? Yeah, guess it's what he had. That's weird. You got to be a good player, Trev. It's a volume award, though. I mean, it's going to go to guys that are putting up numbers. Sometimes the guy putting up numbers is the best receiver in the country. I mean, I had no problem with Jordan Addison winning it in 2021. I had zero problem with Devontae Smith winning it in 2020 or Jamar Chase winning it in 2018 or even Jerry Jeudy winning it in 18. But like Corey Coleman was not the best receiver in college football in 2015. Will Fuller was.
Do those awards go out before bowl games?
Perhaps.
Because I remember vividly seeing a stat that was what Travis Hunter's numbers were prior to because in the bowl game, he had 4 catches for 106 yards.
Yeah. I don't think Marvin Harrison played in the bowl game the year before. And I'd have to go back and look and see what some of those guys did in the postseason. But yeah, you could be right on that one. Because he'd have been about 1140 something, right? So, but yeah, it would be. But the point is, even 1,100 yards in the regular season is a lot for a Notre Dame player to have.
Yep.
And when you talk about spreading it around, they're not going to throw as much as what Colorado did last year. I mean, they averaged 37 passing yards per game last year. And completed 73% of those 37 passes per game. I just don't think Notre Dame's going to do that. So it's not like I think sometimes as fans we think that, well, the award goes to the best guy at the position. No, it doesn't. Oftentimes it doesn't. It's a guy that has a reputation, a guy that has numbers, whatever. And I just don't know that Notre Dame, Malachi Fields is going to put up those kind of numbers. I think he's capable of it.
Yeah, but
if Notre Dame wanted to be that, hey, Malachi is who we're building our offense around, could he have 80 catches for 1,250, 1,300 yards and 14? Sure, he's capable of it if they wanted to force the ball to him that way. I just don't think that they're going to throw enough to do that. Because you look at a lot of those teams that had those type of the Biletnikoff winners, Trev, they threw the ball a decent amount.
Yeah,
and that factored into it as well. So. Ohio State this year didn't have a Biletnikoff winner, but they won a championship and they averaged, 28 passes a game. Last year under Kyle McCord, they averaged 31 passes a game. So it's just different. CJ Stroud, 31.5, 38 in 2021. So those teams tend to throw the ball a lot more as well. Good questions.
Buy, sell, hold from Josh CSP 77. The staff will sign another interior defensive lineman in the 26 recruited class.
Definitely buy. I think the only question is who. But yes, they'll definitely get another interior defensive lineman.
Then buy, sell, hold. Someone on this year's defensive line will have a breakout year.
Yeah, I think I'm confident in saying that, Josh. My only question at that point in time is who, and will it be an inside or an outside guy? I don't know who that's going to be, but the reason I'm confident in is because we've seen breakouts happen the last couple of years. I mean, Riley Mills had a highest level breakout this season, and he was always a good player, became a dominant player. Howard Cross had one in 2023. Javonte Jean-Baptiste had one in 2023. Isaiah Foskey had one in 2021. This past season, I don't, looking up this upcoming season, I don't know who that's going to be. Is it Josh Burnham? Is it Bryce Young? Is it Boubacar Traore? Is it Junior Chilamaka? Is it Logan Thomas? Is it Gabriel Rubio? Is it Jason Onye? Is it Jared Dawson? I mean, there's a lot of – is it Armel Mukum? Is it I'm drawing a blank on Donovan Heine. I mean, there's a lot of potential options, and that's why I think someone breaks out. Now, the question is going to be if we're talking breakout to the point where, they're going to be like a first-team All-American. I don't know about that. But if we're talking like breakout and how we define breakout, the top two levels of what we define breakout, then absolutely, I think that'll happen. I think the odds are better that multiple guys have breakouts than nobody has a breakout.
I was just about to say, depending on how we're defining breakout, I'd make the argument it's going to be multiple people. Because
let's say it's the top two levels. Guys either become like stars, like a Riley Mills type of breakout, Isaiah Foskey type of breakout, or a guy that never played much becomes a really good player, which is kind of more in the line of what like Howard Cross was 2 years ago, where his numbers weren't super dominant, but he was a pretty good player and an impactful player for Notre Dame, even if he's not considered like a 10 sack guy and elite player, that kind of thing. One of those two levels.
Yeah, I'm definitely buying this. I would make the case in that scenario. I'd say at least two.
I'm with you.
Buy, sell, hold from ADNDMD.
This is a new member to the site. So
there we go.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Buy, sell, hold Irish coaches that never were, who would have had a statue after their tenure. So buy one, sell one, hold one. George, AI did my resume O'Leary. I guess we buy, sell, hold each one. So George O'Leary.
I think he says buy one, sell one, hold one.
Okay.
So I think
George O'Leary. Gary, I'd like to remove my name from consideration. Barnett or John Chucky Gruden.
This is a good first submission. In that instance, I'm going to buy George O'Leary because I think George O'Leary is a really good football coach. I am going to hold Gary Barnett because he was a good college coach at times. He wasn't an elite one. And I'm selling John Gruden. I think John Gruden would have been a really bad college football coach. John Gruden is an NFL guy. Like he's one of those guys that's incapable, in my opinion, of dumbing things down to a degree where he'd have successful coaching college kids. And I just don't know that his style of communication would be overly effective with teenagers.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely selling that one. Like that one's not even close. That's
fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Buy, sell, hold from the history expert. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are the most explosive running back duo since Darren McFadden and Felix Jones from Arkansas.
Oh, boy, are they even the most? I mean, who else is kind of? I mean, Oregon's had some really good duos in recent years. Ohio State's last year was good, was really dynamic at times.
I did some looking up on this one. Okay. One, in my research of doing this, I also forgot that Peyton Hillis was on the team at Arkansas with these guys.
He was on that team with them too? Good night. What was that? Yep. That was 06, right?
05 to 07, all three of those guys were in the backfield.
Dang.
And then in 06 and 07, McFadden and Jones each went for over 1,000. And then like Peyton Hillis in both of those years, I think went for like 400 and then 500. I mean, that running back room was crazy. But since then, some of the names that I just off the top of my head, like since then, you had like the Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson duo from, that was after 07. You had.
I don't know that I would view that running back room as explosive.
I'm just thinking of good running back duo rooms since 07. Yeah. Like Nick Chubb and Sony Michel when they were at Georgia together.
That was a very good one.
Yeah. That one, just watching them do what they did in that Rose Bowl in 2017 was crazy.
Yeah. That
was nuts.
And what's funny against Notre Dame, the guy who had the most success against Notre Dame was DeAndre Swift.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a couple Oregon ones early in the 2010s that I thought had a couple pretty dynamic players.
Yeah, that was
2011 with Michael James and Kenjon Barner. That's probably so 2011 Oregon's probably my pick since then. LaMichael James had 1,800 yards, 7.3. Because, again, it's about explosiveness. 7.3 yards per attempt. Kenjon Barner had 939 yards, 6.2 per attempt. And then DeAnthony Thomas had 595 yards, 10.8 yards per attempt as sort of the slot guy. So that's probably the one that I would go with off the top of my head since then. And I do think that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have a chance to be every bit as explosive as that duo.
Yep.
So I'll buy that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that Arkansas group in 2006, I mean, McFadden was the least explosive of the two at 5.8 per carry. Felix Jones went for 7.6 yards per carry. So that's an impressive number. Very impressive number. So, but that Oregon in 2011 was pretty dynamic.
Yep. Just for fun, I looked up the 2012 West Virginia running back room. I remember Tavon Austin just going nuts, average 8.9 yards per carry. As a wide receiver.
As a receiver, yeah.
But he had 72 carries for 643
Wasn't there
yards.
a year that Noel Devine and another running back at West Virginia had like big years together, or am I misremembering that? So Noel was good in 08 or 07 to 09. So let me look that up. So in 07, yeah. But Steve Slayton actually wasn't as dynamic as I thought. In 06, 07, Pat White, the quarterback, had 1,300 yards, 6.8 per carry. Steve Slayton went for 1,051 yards, 5.0 yards per carry. Noel Devine had 627 yards, 8.6 yards per carry. Then 07, Slayton wasn't there, so you only really had Noel Devine. So, yeah, that 07, it would have been Noel Devine's freshman year, would have been a pretty dynamic year. But I remember there being a year at West Virginia with Noel Devine where they had two really good running backs. So him and Steve Slayton, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That was a year after this one.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Georgia's running back in 2015 was Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, and Sony Michel.
Well, 2 years later was Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, and DeAndre Swift. Like they had some dudes back then. There's no doubt.
Lord.
There's no doubt.
Man. Buy, sell, hold from Double Bogey. Al Golden was the best in-game coach since Lou.
At Notre Dame? Oh, boy. Man. That's, if you'd have asked me this before the semifinals, I probably would have said yes. But even the semifinals, I thought some of those halftime adjustments were really good. I still have a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth from the championship game, and I just didn't think he did a good job in that game. But I mean, I'd probably have to say yes. And the reason he says Lou is because Lou called so many plays. There were games at Notre Dame, true story, Trev, where Lou Holtz called the offense and the defensive game because he'd get pissed at one of the coordinators and he'd take over. Because he was always calling the offense, and then there was a couple times where he got pissed at the defensive coordinators. He started calling the game, and Notre Dame, I think, won those games. But, at Notre Dame, I mean, it's close. I thought Chip Long was a great in-game play caller. Looking at some other coaches, I thought Mike Denbrock in 2015 was pretty darn good in-game. Yeah. Some of his ability to counter and counter punch and things like that. The Lou's D coordinators weren't great after Barry Alvarez left. Nobody under Ty, nobody under Weiss. I mean, Weiss was a pretty good in-game coach on offense his first in 05. I mean, he was brilliant, but I think Al Golden did it over a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that. I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Yeah, I'll buy that as well, just because I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but sure. Buy, sell, hold. Oh, I'm sorry. Buy one, sell one, hold one. One of the Butkus Award winners for this year's team. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jalen Smith, and Manti Te'o.
For this year's team, it's buy Jalen Smith, hold Manti, sell Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. That's easy. Because you've already got a really good Mike linebacker. Now, Manti Te'o is better than Drake Bowen. But you've already got a good linebacker. I'd rather have a combination of Jalen and Drake than Manti and whoever else. But if you were to say, hey, Brian, you have to take Manti and Kingston or Manti and Jane Osbury, and what do you say about that? I'm like, okay, sure, sign me up. But of those two, Jalen Smith in today's era, and that's the biggest thing too, is I think Jalen Smith is the best fit for today's era of college football. Manti Te'o would be great in any era of college football. But Jalen is even more built for this era. And so I think he'd be elite in this defense. And next to Drake Bowen, yeah, sign me up. I'll take that. He was even hard to stop. I mean, the only person who could slow down Jalen Smith in college was Brian Van Gorder.
Fair. Would you say that Manti's a better fit for this era than JOK would be for this era?
No, it's just so much that the JOK could absolutely play in this era. I mean, he played a few years ago. It's just that Notre Dame doesn't play as much nickel. And while he could move inside, I think his whole thing is like I just want if he was at Notre Dame right now, they're playing him more than nickel. So it's like but they like the nickel aspects that they do. There's some coverage things that they give you advantages of. JOK would be a great player on this Notre Dame team. But you'd have to adjust what you do and what you want to do, which a good coach would do. But I also have always felt like the difference in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah between Jalen Smith and Manti is they were always closer to the ball. And I want the guy that's closer to the ball.
Fair enough.
And that's why. It's easier for me as an offensive coach to game plan away from Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah than it would be for Jalen Smith or Manti. It's hard to game plan against any of them, but if you're ranking who's harder, he'd be at the bottom of that who's harder list.
Good deal. Buy, sell, hold. 4 freshmen are in the 2 deep and pushing for starter snaps by midseason, not due to injury, but from their talent.
Okay, so who are some options there? True freshmen that are in the 2 deep and pushing for starter snaps by midseason because of their talent. I don't think Will Black will be there. I hope he is, but I don't think he's going to be like pushing for starter snaps. I don't think he'll be there. Gerby Lambert's going to push for starter snaps before Will Black, and that's okay. I could be wrong on that, and I think Will Black's a 5-star, but it's just 2 deep, yes. Like I fully expect Will Black to be the number 2 left tackle at some point in time this season, but pushing for starter snaps, not because of injury, that's a little bit of a different animal. Nobody else in the O-line, nobody at running back, nobody at wide receiver, in my opinion, nobody at running back. The only freshman on offense that I'd say, I think the freshman on offense with the best chance, that's James Flanagan. But starter snaps, again, that's where you lose me. Like 2 deep, yeah. Starter snaps, no. I don't see James Flanagan pushing for starter snaps over Eli Raridan, barring injury.
Yeah.
Defensively, nobody from the D-line, nobody at linebacker, and definitely somebody at safety. Jadon Blair at safety could definitely be there. Like, no, I'm going to sell it because there's just not enough. Because again, is Matt Framo capable of that talent-wise in most seasons? Yes. In this season, it's going to be a whole lot harder, barring injury. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Same with James Flanagan. Same with Will Black. And a lot of seasons, you're like, dude, I think Will Black starts by midseason. And I'd be like, yeah, man, for sure. 2021, Will Black's a day 1 starter for Notre Dame. 2021. He started over Blake Fisher coming out of high school in 2021, in my opinion. And I liked Blake coming out. In 2025, he's not. He's not. In 2024, Will Black. Last year, if Will Black was a true freshman last year, he starts at left tackle. He's a better player than Anthony Knapp. But he's not going to beat out year 2 Anthony Knapp, who's got 15 starts under his belt. That you know what I mean? Like that's where I'm coming from when he's in his first semester in college. I don't see it. So This team is 2 deep. There's years where Chris Burgess might be doing that. There's years where several guys are doing that. It's just on this team, it's going to be 4 it's too many.
Yeah, pushing for starter snaps with the make out of this roster, I'm selling this, and I would make the argument you're closer to 1 than you are to 4. And that's not a knock on the freshmen coming in. I'm really high on some of these guys, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Jadon Blair. I mean, Jadon Blair, I think, is the one that would be in the 2 deep and be pushing for starter level snaps. But, I mean, yeah, you get into the conversation of a lot of ifs. If Eli Raridan wasn't there, if Leonard Moore wasn't there, if Christian Gray wasn't there, if, the list goes on and on about the players in the trenches, but they are there, and it's great that they are. Not due to injury is what kind of pushes me over the edge there. So it's a sell for me. Buy, sell, hold from Coach Mikey Mike 007. Jeremiah Love finishes his career at Notre Dame as the greatest running back in Trevor's lifetime. I'm just going through the list of running backs that I've been alive for. Yeah, I mean, impact, production. Yeah, I'll buy that. Yeah, I would definitely buy that. So,
you were born in 97 again, right?
Mm-hmm.
The year I graduated high school. Freaking jerk. You'd be talking about Julius Jones, Ryan Grant.
I started mine more at 05 just because I was alive for some of them.
He simply just said your lifetime. And so I was just looking at like your lifetime. Whether you know what I mean, but if you're talking about when you started watching, be what Darius Walker, Armando Allen, Robert Hughes, Theo Riddick, Sear Wood, Jonas Gray,
CJ Procise,
Torian Folston, Cam McDaniel, Josh Adams, Dexter Williams, Tony Jones, Kyron Williams, Audric Estime, and Jeremiah Love. So from when you started watching, it's that. But even if you add from your lifetime and you add Julius Jones had a heck of a career at Notre Dame. But if Jeremiah Love has another year, anything like last year, he's still going to be better than what Julius Jones was.
Yeah.
And I think Julius Jones was a dude at Notre Dame. If Julius Jones would have played on like the 17 team or the 15 team, he'd have had a 1,500-yard season. Like, he'd have been a monster. But he didn't play on those teams, unfortunately. Which is why his yards per carry number is a little bit down, and he only had like the 1,000-yard season and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. Tyler Buckner will be credited running or passing with 1.5 touchdowns this season.
I'm gonna buy that just for fun because that means like either A, he kind of got into some game in a blowout, or B, there's a couple special teams touchdowns that he's involved in, which I want to see those plays. So I'm gonna buy that just for that. I want to see that. I think that'd be fun to watch. I think that'd be fun to watch.
Yeah. No, I get it. What the heck? I'll buy it too. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. Buy, sell, hold. And I have a feeling
we went 2 weeks without it, and it's back.
Buy, sell, hold. Irish beat Miami by 13.
I'm going to sell that. I think, as we get closer to it, I mean, I'm predicting they're going to win the game. Are they capable? It's like we've always said. Are they capable of beating Miami by 13? Absolutely. They're capable of beating Miami by 30. They're also capable of losing to Miami. So beating by 13 right now, I'm going to hold on that. But if I had to pick one, buy or sell, I'd probably sell it at this time. It's asking a lot to beat a top 25 team on the road by 2 touchdowns. That's asking a lot. In game one, that's asking a lot. If Miami's what you think they are, Trevor, it's asking a lot to go on the road in the first game and beat them by 13 points. I mean, A&M was an 8-5 team last year. Notre Dame beat them by 10 at their place in the opener. I mean, so would you not say, Trev, that A&M last year was basically the same kind of team that Miami is going to be this year? Like record-wise?
Yeah.
So whether that's 8-4 in the regular season, losing a bowl game, or going 7-5 in the regular season and winning a bowl game, and Notre Dame beat them by 10. So, yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame's defense will score 6 touchdowns this season, playoffs included.
What'd they have last year, Trev?
That 2 5. In the USC game, 1 in the Georgia Tech game.
So you had 5 intercept. You had Luke Tausch against Florida State, Boubacar against Purdue, Adon against Georgia Tech, Christian Gray against USC, Xavier Watts against USC, and they had Jalen Smith recovered a fumble in the end zone against Navy. He had 6 last year. That's a lot. I'm going to sell that because that's just a lot, but that's now I know where he got his 6 from. Good research on that, Coach Mikey Mike. I'm going to sell that because that's a lot. That's a lot. But I won't be shocked if they have more than that. Like, what are the odds they have 2 at the end of the regular season? So I'll sell that, but it's not going to be too far off. What say you, Trevor?
I'm going to sell it, but it wouldn't surprise me if they repeated. Yeah. I hope they do.
Yeah. Well played. Well played.
Buy, sell, hold from Teach Like a Champion. Even with the recent commitments of Alistair Viejo and Mikael Blade, I realized Notre Dame didn't push to Michigan and Kari Wilder to Ohio State. Notre Dame defensive line recruiting will finish strong with at least 2 top commitments.
I don't know about 2, so I'm gonna sell that one. I think they're gonna get at least 1 more top commit. I just need to see how the Dre Quinn visit goes before I'm ready to say that. Right now, if I had to predict today where Dre Quinn was going to go to college, it would not be Notre Dame. I'll just say that. I'm not going to give away where I think he's going. It's out there. It's not a secret. But if he picked today, he's not picking Notre Dame. But as long as he makes the visit next weekend, then they'll have a shot, in my opinion. But I think they get 1 more top D lineman. And if you want to know who that is, you got to be on the message board. I know Teach Like a Champion I do have my predicted class. They've got 1 guy from my predicted 2 guys from my predicted class are not going to be in there because they've committed elsewhere. But the 5th D lineman I had on there is still a part of that, and I still feel good about where Notre Dame stands. But I think they'll get 1 more top D line commitment still, not 2. So sell that.
Good deal. Buy, sell, hold again from Teach Like a Champion. As of today, Kadon Finley will be in the Notre Dame 2026 class.
So I'm a little uncomfortable answering this one and then the next one where you as of today, Joey O'Brien will be in our class, because I don't like to do the whole, in a public forum like this, it's like a crystal ball type of prediction. So I'm not comfortable doing this. I'll just say this. I like where Notre Dame is heading into this weekend's visits with both of those players. And now it's just about closing. That's more of a question I'd feel more comfortable answering on the message board. But as of right now, Wednesday, June 11th, I like where Notre Dame is with both of those guys. And then the last one we've answered before, Notre Dame will have a 2027 quarterback commitment before the end of the summer. That's a buy from earlier. But I like where Notre Dame's the problem that I think we as fans have is too many people get caught up on the roller coaster ride that is recruiting. And they evaluate it based off their emotions at the time. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, Notre Dame's problem is they don't finish well. And I'm like, that's a bad way of looking at it. Number one, I think that's not accurate, because this past recruiting cycle, they went out and got Matt Faramo on signing day. But my thing is, why does it matter when they sign or commit? It just matters who they land. For example, if right now Alistair Viejo and Mikael Blade committed to Michigan in March, and this past week Notre Dame landed Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Iwatade, and Tiki Hola in the last week, would anybody be complaining about defensive line recruiting right now? No. And Kari Wilder committed to Ohio State. If they all did that in March and April, but this past week in June, Notre Dame landed Dunham, Iwatade, and Hola, nobody's complaining about D-line recruiting right now, because people get too caught up in the when things happen. I don't care about the when. I care about who's in the class. I don't care about the when. And that's my issue with much of the complaining about recruiting. It's like when Sean and I were on the show telling everybody to calm down when people were freaking out in March about recruiting. We said, calm down. And then Notre Dame goes out and has a great April. And now, recruiting's great. This is great. It's all great. And then June doesn't start off the way you want. And it's, this is the same old. I'm seeing that kind of stuff. You guys you're too caught up in the emotional roller coaster of recruiting. At the end of the day, I don't care about when guys pick Notre Dame. If a kid commits to Notre Dame as a sophomore and he's a stud and he stays the whole way, it doesn't mean any more to me than if he commits to Notre Dame on signing day. I just care that the first day of fall camp, he's on the freaking team. That's all I care about. And too much of this is about the emotional roller coaster of what's happening right now. I'm upset Al Washington's not doing this because they lost on Mikael Blade, Kari Wilder, and Alistair Viejo. The only guy that I thought they were going to get was Viejo. That's a loss. No doubt it's a loss. We never thought they were the leader for Wilder. And they weren't – Blade wasn't even a take at Notre Dame right now. But that's the most recent data. And because it's over 2 months now since Dunham, a 5-star, and Iwatade, a 5-star, have committed, now it's like, well, the momentum. I don't give a crap about momentum in recruiting at the end of the day. That makes for good stories and good discussion points, but all I care about is who do you sign? Who's in the class? And in the class right now, Notre Dame's D-line class is really flipping good. And the fact that if you reverse the time frames, none of you would be complaining. And anyone being honest would admit that. If it was the other way around, yeah, I'd be really happy right now. June 11th, I'd be like, dude, Al Washington's killing it right now. So the timing shouldn't matter. The class would be the same, Trevor. The class would be absolutely the same. But because of the timing of it, people are upset. And that's not how you should evaluate it. You should evaluate it based on who they have in the class and who they get.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm not as versed in the recruiting world as what some others are. I kind of just care about the end product. Like, commitments are cool, but until that, until your signature's inked on paper and you're coming to Notre Dame, it's, even for some of the guys that have committed to Notre Dame, like it's not official until you can put out cool graphics on Twitter and that's awesome. It gets me excited for that day. But until National Signing Day or early signing day now, to me, it's still kind of out in the open. It's kind of like sales. You can have somebody tell you that they're going to buy your product, but until they buy it and there's a transaction that's made, it's not done. I mean, it's kind of about tailoring expectations. And so you just kind of have to live in the gray when it comes to stuff like recruiting. I get it. I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold from We Are Notre Dame. Illinois will win more games than Indiana.
I haven't done my prediction for that. But if I remember correctly, looking at their schedules, I believe that Illinois is slightly better than Indiana's. I have Indiana ranked higher than Illinois in the preseason top 25. I think they're both going to be really good football teams this year. But I think Indiana's schedule, if I remember, and I'm pulling it up now, is a little bit more challenging. And so what's funny is I do think Indiana wins the head-to-head. But Illinois plays at Indiana, but then home against USC, home against Ohio State, at Washington, and then at Wisconsin. Those are their 5 toughest games. The rest of their games, Western Illinois at Duke should be a tough game. Western Michigan at home, at Purdue, home against Rutgers, home against Maryland, home against Northwestern. Indiana, on the other hand, has to play Illinois at home, at Iowa, at Oregon, at Penn State, and then they're home against Michigan State, UCLA, Wisconsin. They play at Maryland. So I just think Indiana's schedule is slightly tougher. I could see Indiana going 9-3 and Illinois being 10-2, and Indiana's the better team. Like, if you were evaluating the quality of the teams, they'd be the better team. But I think right now I'd lean probably closer to they're going to have an identical record, like 9-3. It's probably where I'd lean right now. I haven't made my official prediction, but the one thing I will predict is I do think Indiana beats Illinois in their head-to-head game. It's at Indiana. I like this Indiana team, but I also like Illinois. I think I have Indiana 9th in my preseason top 25, and I think I have Illinois like 13th. It's not a big difference there. They're both really good football teams.
No, I'm in the same boat as you are. I see them probably having identical records, both at 9-3. But who knows?
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. With the new house settlement in place, we will see less transfers in basketball and football.
So I gotta hold that one because I'm gotta think about that one. I know Jay Billis put an article out today, and the premise of his article was that it'll be that way because you're going to see teams signing guys to contracts. But here's the reality of it. In the current structure, what does a contract even mean anymore? Like, what that'll simply mean is kids leave would have to then pay a buyout to go. Well, if you want a kid bad enough, you're going to pay the buyout. And you're going to have, what's going to happen is the first time they try to tell the kid, well, you can't leave because you have a contract, they're going to say, well, okay, that doesn't bind me here. I'm not an employee of this school. This is an NIL contract. Okay. So why don't you pay me that contract when you go over here? I just don't think I don't agree with Jay Billis' standpoint of right now under the current structure that you're going to be able to have binding 3 to 4 year deals. Like, I think schools will kind of sign those, but I don't know that they're going to be binding contracts because first time a kid wants to leave, he's going to just sue.
Yeah.
So I'm not sold on that. He's a former lawyer, so I'm going to try to read that article and see the legal argument he's making and see if there is a legal argument he's making before I kind of disagree with him. I'm just saying my gut reaction is not the same as his. But I assume as someone who is a former lawyer, went to law school, he would have a better, and he played college basketball at the Division I level. He probably has a little bit more insight into this. So I need to read what he said first and see that argument. My gut says that if we see less, it won't be significant. But I hope he's right. So that's where I'm at on that one.
Fair enough.
So this is the last one. So the question is from Ryan Brandstatter. He says, hey, Brian and Trevor. This is not really a buy so hold, but I thought it was a fun question and I wanted to do it anyway. It says, hey, Brian and Trevor, using $15 and picking one person from each column, what team would you build? And this is his option. So I think this was done. I saw this one before. So, Trev, I'm very curious what you think about this one. So I'll say this. So it's like the first line, looking at it from a row standpoint, not or from a column standpoint, not a row standpoint. The first column are quarterbacks. The second column are running backs. The third, fourth columns are receivers. And then the fifth column are tight ends. So looking at that, you basically, on average, can spend $3 per player on average. It's going to average $3 per person. So if I remember correctly, I think I went, because I did this one before. Let's see here. So I've got, that's 8, 10. So I went, let's see here. Yeah, so here's what I would do if it was up to me. And I think this would be a pretty ridiculous team. Let me do the math here. Here's mine, Trev. Here's mine. All right. My quarterback is Everett Golson for $1.
Yep.
Okay. My running back is CJ Procise for $1.
Okay.
Who'd you have? We'll go each position at a time.
You and I have the same quarterback. I went Jeremiah Love at running back.
Okay, so you spent your 5 on Jeremiah Love at running back. There's nothing wrong with that. Here's why I invested my money's pass catchers. I went $5 on Michael Floyd. I went $3 on Will Fuller. That's the biggest steal out there.
Yeah.
So who are your two receivers?
I went Will Fuller for $3. Can't believe he was a $3 receiver.
Yeah.
And then I went Jeff Samardzija for $4.
Okay. I dig that. And then my tight end at $5 is Michael Mayer.
Mm. Yep.
So that's $15.
My tight end was Mitchell Evans for
and I'll be honest with you, Trev. I almost wanted to go under 15 and take Tyler Eifert over Michael Mayer. But I wanted to stay true to the thing because I thought about okay, I'm going to take my first thought was I'm going to take Tyler Eifert at tight end, but then I'd have to take Josh Adams at running back, and I'd rather have CJ Procise at running back. So, but so that's why I went with the 1 and the 5. But honestly, I'd rather have Tyler Eifert than Michael Mayer. So I honestly, for mine, I'd almost be willing to say I'm going to spend $14 instead of, but I'm not going to spend that extra dollar quarterback because for the way I run my offense, I'd rather have Everett Golson than Riley Leonard. So it was hard for me not to take Brady or Jimmy at quarterback. It's very hard.
I thought you were going to. I'm not going to lie.
No. Well, just because I've always felt like, it's great to have a good quarterback, but Everett was a good quarterback. Give me Everett with elite pass catchers over Brady with good pass catchers or Jimmy with good pass catchers. But if you were to take Jimmy for $4, and I'd be curious what the people in the chat would do on this one. I want to hear what you guys have to say. But I'm very curious to see, like, if you took, let's say, Jimmy at $4. So go here, Jimmy at $4. And then I'd say I'd probably make up $1 at running back. So I'd try to make it up there. So Jimmy at quarterback, I'd saw Procise at running back. So then I've got basically $10 to spend on the other two. So I got to go 4, 3, and 3 essentially. Am I doing the math correctly on that one?
Yep.
So then I could still go Will Fuller at 3. And then I'd go, actually, you know what? Here's a good one. No, Will Fuller at 3. So I go 3, 3, and 4. I go 3. Okay, here we go. Let me do this one. So I'm going to, because I really want that receiving core of Michael Floyd, 8, 9, 13. So here's what I'm going to do, Trev. If I wanted to get Jimmy at quarterback, I'd go Jimmy or Brady at quarterback. I would go Jimmy at quarterback, CJ at running back, Fuller at receiver, Floyd at receiver, Mitchell Evans at tight end.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I don't know if our guy Salty's still in here, but he would just have a team of 15 Jaden Greathouses.
Yes. I'd have Jaden Greathouse thrown to Jaden Greathouse and handing off to Jaden Greathouse.
After a play action fake to Jaden Greathouse.
I'd also have a play where I'd throw where I'm using Jaden Greathouse as a decoy for Jaden Greathouse.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. No, that's a fun one. I like these. Yeah, I like these a lot. Yeah. No, that's good. So that's where I'd go. And it looks like there's only one person in the chat paying attention. There are two people in the chat paying attention to what we're actually discussing now. Archer said there was an OSU one with a DN instead of tight end. I took Fields at 5, Travion at 3, Emeka at 2, Olave at 3, and Jack Sawyer at 2. My question is, who in the world decided that Justin Fields is going to be worth more money than CJ Stroud? Yeah.
Like, that's a terrible one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
PJC had Clausen, Procise, Fuller, Floyd, and Evans. That's the one that I put out. And then Ryan Branstetter, whose question it was, said he had Jimmy, Adams, Fuller, Floyd, and Tremble. That's not a bad one either. That's not a bad one at all either. Because in that instance, look, you're going to have a ton of balls going to Fuller and Floyd. So you got a tight end who can move the chains, but is more of a blocker. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I dig that one, Ryan. I dig that one for sure. I assumed that CJ was 4, but there's on no planet should CJ Stroud be considered less than what Justin Fields was. That's my whole point. So, yeah, I like that one. James Mertz had Riley Leonard for 2, Audric Estime for 3, Greathouse for 1, Floyd for 5, and Eifert for 4. That turns out to be what? 2, 5, 6, 11, and that's 15. That's not a bad one from James Mertz either.
Yeah,
that's not a bad one at all. Especially if you're getting like Riley Leonard in year 2 of Mike Denbrock's offense. That's the thing is if Riley had a second year in Denbrock's offense, my opinion of him might change. But I also think he'd probably be the $3 guy now and not the $2 guy if he had a second year in Mike Denbrock's offense. So,
even if you wanted to get like 2 $5 guys, like give Michael Floyd to Brady Quinn. So there's your 10.
Yeah.
CJ Procise is your running back. You're at 11.
Yeah.
Shoot, add another wide receiver, have Will Fuller and Michael Floyd on the same team, and then your tight end still Mitchell Evans. if I'm doing that math right, or Tommy Tremble.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Is there anybody that's left off this list that you think should be? Because I think Cole Kmet should be on this list somewhere.
I'd have Cole Kmet over Tremble as much as I love Tommy Tremble. Because we're looking at basically since 05. Honestly, if we're going back to 05 with Quinn, I'd have Mo Stovall over Jordan Faison. I'd have Mo Stovall over Miles Boykin. I'd have Mo Stovall over TJ Jones. I'd have Mo Stovall over Equanimity St. Brown, Anthony Fasano, like John Carlson.
Yeah.
I think we're both better. But those two guys are definitely better than the bottom two at tight end. For sure. I think Cole Kmet is on that list as well. He's better than those two guys, in my opinion. So, yeah, there were certainly some guys. Running back wise, I'm okay with the 5 they picked.
Yep.
I would not have been like, hey, dude, where is Darius Walker? But I would have been okay with Darius because Darius did it for multiple years where ProSize did it for 1.
Yeah.
Adams was a multiple year stud. Estime was a multiple year stud. Kyron Williams is a multiple year stud. I would have probably had Estime over a higher than Williams, personally. And I would have probably had Josh Adams over Kyron Williams as well. People forget Josh Adams had the number 2 rushing season all time at Notre Dame. He also rushed for 900 yards the year before that and also set the Notre Dame freshman rushing record in 2015. Josh Adams is an incredibly effective running back at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. And had, I think, the longest touchdown run in Notre Dame Stadium history, that 98-yarder against Wake Forest.
Yeah. Yeah. So Josh Adams, his 1,430 yards in 2017 is only 7 yards behind Vegas Ferguson. Man. Josh Adams finished his career with more rushing yards than anyone on that list, and it's not close. He had over 3,000 career rushing yards. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he was.
Yeah.
That's an issue there. So, yeah, those are some guys that I would have probably put on there.
You know what's crazy? Since 2005, you could probably make an entire grid of this list with just Notre Dame offensive linemen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, all right.
That was a good one, Ryan. Very good. It
good.
Wasn't a buy so hold, but it's fun. And I thought it'd be a fun way to kind of end today's show. So we brought that one up. And Ryan is a board member, but since he couldn't get the card onto so the reason we brought that up is Ryan's a board member, but you can't upload photos onto the site because we used to allow photos to be uploaded, but we would get things that were being uploaded with them that were causing problems on our server and our site. And so he sent me that via Twitter. And so that's why we brought up his question the way that he was. So it was fun. It's fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's a good way to end the show. Well, all right, folks, that's going to do it for the buy, sell, hold edition of today's show. Now, be sure to hop over at 5 p.m. to the gentleman this evening on IB Nation Sports Talk. They have their midweek mailbag. Brian and I will be back tomorrow, talk more Notre Dame football specific, off-season content, looking ahead to the 2025 season. But before you guys head out of here, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Whatever streaming platform you guys listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Until tomorrow at 1 p.m., that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.